and then I'll just sit here and listen to the amazing intros.
I do amazing intros, man.
Yeah.
Well, hello,
keep
people.
all that in.
Would you shut the fuck up? Well, hello, people. We're going to have to keep that in the first 5 seconds.
I'm going to. I told you.
All right. Well, hello, people of Defend the House, and welcome back to another episode of the big Roundup podcast. I got it this time. I got it.
You've been good. I think that's like 3 for 3 that you've gotten it on, which is good.
Finally. Took like 6 months to figure that out.
Yeah, after 4 years of...
I know. We keep reformatting it and changing the titles. This episode is covering... what month are we on?
It doesn't matter anymore. I don't even do it by months. I don't even think I put the months in it anymore. I don't know. September. Ish. Yeah.
Today, we will be covering Psychonauts 2, Deathloop, and probably, Kenna Bridge of Spirits. I say maybe because it's one of those games where they've been a little bit quiet on it when it comes to marketing. No one's really got hands on. So it's just hard to know if that's going to be something that kind of trickles down into our podcast chats, or if it's like, big and exciting enough to be, among the AAA, because that's kind of what we do on this show. We focus on the big releases, the big boys. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, Psychonauts 2 is maybe pushing it when it comes to calling it a big boy. But
I don't know about that anymore.
I don't really know how many people care. I didn't, because I was away when it first came out, so I didn't really see the internet's reaction.
Definitions of scale or AA and AAA are stupid anyways. It's a Microsoft first-party game, so I don't know. It doesn't matter. Double Fine is still a pretty, smaller studio.
Definitely, yeah.
It's the big games. They're big to us.
Yeah, it's quiet.
Who cares
as well.
what everyone else thinks? It's the big ones.
Yeah, to us.
Yeah.
So Psychonauts 2, I was a really big fan of Psychonauts 1. Mm-hmm. I actually only played it for the first time like 3 years ago. And it's a 16-year-old game.
Yeah, yep.
And going backwards in time can be quite difficult with video games because obviously they get better, things change. And Psychonauts was surprisingly quite easy to go back to. I think sometimes when you play older games on PC, you get to, control the resolution, and at the end it can still look very sharp, but obviously just like old in style. And a lot of the times it's just like the controls and the camera that really make old games hard to go back to. But surprisingly, Psychonauts 1 was really, really good, and it survived the test of time. And I came away as a new and pretty big Psychonauts fan. Before we go forward, I just want to know if you played Psychonauts 1 because you did hint at it.
Yes.
Okay, because I know you've tried it and kind of maybe hit a roadblock because, it is an old game. And I know what you're like with old games. But
I tried it it's been on, I don't even, I've owned that game for as long as I can remember. And then I played like 2 hours, 3 hours, 90 minutes, I don't know, something like that a few years ago and had a perfectly fine time. And then I think just other things came up. I don't remember.
That game takes a while to get going as well.
It also does take a while to get going, yeah. And then you told me about one of the jokes and it made me laugh so hard that I realized I should play it. Your telling of it was funnier than perhaps in the game, but I knew it was coming as soon as it was happening. And yeah, so I bombed through it while you were away on your vacation. I basically had quite an interesting psychonautic week and a half while you were away, if you will.
That.
I resumed where I had left off, which was mostly fine, because it's just a platformer right at the end of the day. The first game and the second game as well. So it wasn't that complicated to jump back into. And I basically just beelined it through the story. I didn't do really any side stuff in terms of which the side stuff is basically just exploring and collecting.
Yeah.
Primarily at the camp and all that. And I'm not ashamed to admit, I enabled a cheat that just gave me all the powers because it seemed like you had to do quite a bit of side exploration to get enough currencies to get those powers. And I knew I didn't want to burn myself out because I knew I was going to go and probably theoretically do more or less everything in Psychonauts 2. So I just beelined it through the story. And yeah, it's I would say by and large it holds up pretty well. There's definitely some jank in the not the controls. The controls are fine. It's more so just the camera can be a bit I don't know, Dark Souls-ish at times is what I would say. There's a few times where you're like, oh, camera, where are we right now?
I mean, for you to play a 16-year-old game, that's a miracle.
Yeah, I agree.
And there says a lot.
There's more than a few sort of puzzle-ish, like more adventure game-ish sort of designed encounters, which makes sense considering, the past with Tim Schafer and all that. And those ones, I had to look up a guide a couple of times just to be like, what the hell am I doing here? But aside from that, it was very easy and easygoing and fun, and I played it through in like 2 days.
Yeah.
Like I think I decided on the day you left or that I was going to play it, and then the Psychonauts 2 is coming out Wednesday, and I think I finished it Tuesday.
Nice.
And then immediately rolled into 2. And yes, 1 was it's I really enjoyed the spirit and personality of it all, and the creativity is pretty good. Obviously, it's sort of old, but by and large, all the writing holds up.
Yeah,
it's quite fun. It's quirky, and the cast and general world and premise and all that is really fun, really enjoyable. And then I rolled right into Psychonauts 2.
Yeah.
Which, holy shit, that's quite the 16 years from like the struggling indie-ish game from 2003 to like, hey, we finished this game in 2018, and then Microsoft said, you can have all the money you want to just keep polishing it all for 3 years, and they did.
They said they finished it in 2018. I didn't know that.
Something like that, yeah. And that it was quite the swerve, quite the swing, quite the just dramatic step up in production values and art and everything.
I feel like if you're waiting for 16 years for a sequel, it's usually just give up. It's never happening.
Yeah.
Usually.
It's wild to me how many of these long lost sequels have come out over the last just 2 years. Final Fantasy, Half-Life, Psychonauts, 1 or 2 others, I think. And they've all been really good. And it's weird.
It's almost like taking your time with a video game can result in something really, really good.
Yeah. Yeah, just a tiny bit of backstory with Psychonauts 2. For people that don't know, it was, God, it's been a journey. I think in like the early 2010s, there was Notch famously saying he would fund it, and that went on for a long time. Yeah, and then we all know how that ends. Thank God he wasn't involved. And then I believe Starbreeze was going to help fund it along with their Fig, which is basically a Kickstarter equivalent, and that was launched I think in 2015. And Starbreeze is they've done all sorts of things, but they're primarily what's the cops and robbers game? Payday.
Oh God, I thought that was going to shut down.
And then in like 2017, they declared bankruptcy and had to pull out of Psychonauts' funding. And then I believe in 2018, while so the Fig got like $3 million just. That was their goal, and they got like $10,000 or $20,000 over that. And and then I think I heard something like in not long before Microsoft bought them, they were saying the game is more or less finished, but we had to cut all the boss fights from the game to come under budget and under time and all that. And then Microsoft bought them, and they said you just do your thing, take your time, do whatever you want. And then they spent, I think, the last like 2 years pretty much just going ham on it, as the kids say. And it finally came out. And it's also interesting because Psychonauts 1, I read up on all the history of both these games, and they've got good stories. Psychonauts 1 was originally funded by Microsoft long ago, and then Microsoft bailed on the project after like 2 years of funding, and Double Fine had to go and find money from some other company to get Psychonauts 1 done, and they had to cut a bunch of stuff to get Psychonauts 1 shipped, and now here we are 16 years later where it's become a Microsoft game again. and Microsoft sort of helped them ship an even better game than they probably would have if it had been shipped on their own. So anyways, Psychonauts 2 is finally out.
Psychonauts 2 is out. I wasn't really expecting a whole lot from Psychonauts 2, not to be down on Double Fine.
Sure.
But ever since Psychonauts, everything they've released has been like pretty good.
Yeah.
But very reasonable in scope.
Yes.
Very indie feeling, whatever that means. And I just don't expect anything. I don't know how to say this without sounding like an asshole. I just don't expect anything like tremendous and grand.
Well, I think
Double Fine.
Just before we started recording, you said about Kana or however the hell you say it.
Yeah.
You hope it's something more than just a fleeting experience.
Yes.
And I personally would say I like Double Fine's games more than, I think fleeting is maybe a little harsh, because quite a few of their games that I played, like Stacking, Iron Brigade, Headlander, Broken Age, they're all I don't know, they've all stuck in my mind more than I would think, and they're all quite good. But I do agree, I know what you mean. They're smaller experiences, because they're a smaller studio, at least historically. They've been scrappy, and every project has been like, oh god, this is, money is hard. Getting publishers is hard, especially getting publishers to make weird, creative, quirky games is extra hard. And you can always sort of feel that in their games, at least historically.
Yeah. So yeah, we should probably just kind of get to it. I think the one adjective I would really like to use for Psychonauts 2, which I don't feel like I don't really use for many games, is I think Psychonauts 2 is brilliant. I think that's the one word that really jumps to mind.
Yeah. Yes.
It's exceptional. But
yes.
a lot of games are good nowadays.
True.
But Psychonauts 2 is good in a different way. It's just so consistently smart and creative and funny and interesting all the way through in pretty much everything it tries, that it was kind of shocking.
Yes.
And also it's really long as well.
Yes.
It's like a 20-hour game.
Uh-huh.
What the hell, man?
I just nodded my head a lot there, because the other half of me saying I played through all of Psychonauts 1 and it was good and I had a good time, and then Psychonauts 2 was like astonishing. Like,
Psychonauts 2 might be one of the best sequels ever made.
Yeah. This is like Uncharted 1 to Uncharted 2.
Yes, that's a good
for
good
3D
comparison.
platformers.
Everything that made Psychonauts 1 really great is prevalent in Psychonauts 2, but they double and triple down on it. This feels like what would happen if Psychonauts had like maybe 2 more games, and we're looking at like Psychonauts 4.
Right.
It feels like so far down the, I don't know, mastering of whatever the Psychonauts format is.
It also
It's
feels
funnier.
like 2 games worth of content as well. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
It's funnier, yes, for sure.
It's funnier. It's more visually interesting.
Oh my god, yeah.
It's the game design, the level design is better.
Yep. The visuals, the soundtrack, the writing, the voice acting,
Yeah.
the music,
The story?
the
Did you say story?
the cast, the level design.
Yeah.
Psychonauts 2 is like one of the best games I played in years.
Yeah, it's one of the best games of the year by miles.
Yeah.
This is a year where we've had
It's had some bangers.
Ratchet and Clank.
Mm-hmm.
We've had what's the co-op one?
It Takes Two.
It Takes Two. This has been a very good year for 3D platformers.
Oh yeah, Little Nightmares, which I haven't gotten to yet, but
Little
I hope
Nightmares
to
2
before
is
the end of the year.
excellent.
Yeah.
And then Psychonauts 2 comes along and is the best of the bunch somehow.
Yeah.
It's what the hell? This game is so good.
I feel like a bit blasphemous for saying it, but like, I mean, it's not quite like the actual controls are not as tight as a Mario game, but I would say just about everything else in this game is better than any of the Mario games I've seen or played. In terms of just the whole package.
I mean, I like it more than Odyssey.
I do too.
I like it more than Odyssey.
Yeah.
By a long, long way.
You know, and I don't know why comparing things to Mario is stupid, but like, yeah, a 3D platformer is like historically they're sort of like a sort of first-person shooter where, you know, you go into a shooter and you're like, the shooting's good. That's all I need from a good first-person shooter. Like, the platforming and level design is good, great. And it has personality and charm, but it's not very often that it feels like such a complete package in terms of just also story and character progression and every single part of it, you know?
I think a good place to start, because you might as well just, I don't know, pick somewhere, is level design. Because I think for me, in Psychonauts 1, the thing that stayed with me the longest was how like diverse the levels were. It's not just in visuals, but in gameplay. Like, the game kind of completely changes how it plays, depending on like the context of the mind you were in. If people have never played Psychonauts, the large majority of the game is kind of based inside people's minds. And this gives the level designers and the game designers pretty much free reign to do whatever they want. They can make these Alice in Wonderland psychedelic crazy worlds. But what I love about Psychonauts is there's always a theme, and it obviously depends on the psyche of the character you are inside. And it's much more interesting in 2, in my opinion.
Definitely.
In Psychonauts 1, it was mostly based around mental illnesses. So there was this quite common theme of like fractured, unhinged minds. And in Psychonauts 2, there definitely is some of that, where you're playing in minds of people who are dealing with like grief and sadness, or their minds are maybe just being like fractured apart. But there's like, I don't want to say too much, because I don't want to give away all the settings of the levels. But like, one of the really interesting ones to me was near the end, where you're in the mind of someone who's like almost been radicalized by propaganda, which I thought was a really interesting setting.
Yeah.
The best level in the game is you start out in the mind of someone who's basically a blank slate, and they've been gone for so long they've kind of forgotten everything about being a human. Their senses are dulled, and the whole level is about bringing every single one of their senses like back to them.
The Jack Black level.
Oh my god, it's called Psyking Sensorium.
Yes.
I writ it down. Holy shit, that level is maybe the best level of the year.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anything will come close to it.
It's got a hell of a finale as well with that song.
Oh my god.
It's good.
Oh my god, it's so good.
It's so long as well. Like,
a lot of levels in this game really go on.
Huge, yeah.
But yeah, the settings in this game, the minds that you explore, are a bit more interesting than in Psychonauts 1. And in Psychonauts 1, they were good anyway. So it's a big compliment, honestly.
Yeah, I would say the Psychonauts 1 levels were not as crazy as I thought they were going to be. There are a few standout ones, like the Milkman level, which is really quite interestingly designed. The final level is a meat circus, which is pretty weird and gross and funny. But I don't remember many of the others. Whereas Psychonauts 2 has like 20 levels, 15 levels. I don't know. And every one of them, it's got probably 15 levels. I mean, some of them are pretty short, like when you're doing Ford's stuff. All of his levels, they're sort of a bunch of smaller levels. But every single one of them is so completely different from the other. You really have absolutely no idea what to expect, and they keep that up all the way through to the end, which is not something games do very often. It's not very often that the first level you're like, holy shit, look at this is incredible. That you feel that about every single level all the way until the credits roll. And Psychonauts 2 does that. And part of that is just due to the sheer art.
Oh, the art is so good.
The variety, quality, density of the art is unbelievable throughout.
It kind of reminded me of when I praised Genesis Noir in the podcast for its crazy psychedelic visuals and the variety.
Right.
There are sections in Psychonauts 2 which rival that game, and Genesis Noir is basically focused on just that.
Right.
And Psychonauts 2 is a whole package, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and there's so much. I know we're sort of going all over the place here, but we're sort of related to the levels, I guess. One of the things that I noticed a lot is there's just so much attention to detail in all these little areas, and that's the stuff that really makes a game feel extra special is it's things like when you're on the Psy Kings level and when you run through the flowers and all the dandelion seeds sort of break up as you run through them. The music changes completely while you're running through and reacts to you running through the flowers. Or like on the postmaster level later on, if you run across the inkwell that the stamps hit, you leave inky footprints behind you. Like there's so many little things like that in every level as well.
Yeah. There's one small moment in a level where you're in it's a bowling themed level where you're on the bowling ball and you go through the slime and there's like a specific animation for the slime sticking to the bowling ball. And I was like, oh, look at that. That's sick. And you go through the slime like twice on the bowling ball.
Yeah, it's just like a tiny little track on the level that has slime in it. Yeah. That's the stuff that sets apart, the games like the Naughty Dog games, or the Rockstar games where they're just like, they've thought of everything. Because they spent 9 years and $1 billion making this game, and in this case, they spent $1 billion. Well, I don't, it feels like that, and it's for a crazy, weird, ultra creative 3D platformer where you play as a child with a huge head that invades people's brains.
Yeah, I think by its standing, it's still quite a niche franchise.
I think you're right.
Never in a million years did I expect such a large and expensive feeling product to come out of it,
No, I know, it's crazy.
I like the different tones across the levels as well. There's a lot of really beautiful visuals in Psychonauts and a lot of very colorful and just comfortable levels to be in. But there's also some really disgusting stuff in this game. There's some horrifying moments.
Oh yeah.
One thing I've always really liked about Psychonauts is it feels like it's a game made for children, but it's not afraid to do scary adult things in it. There's death and there's murder in the game.
There's a real PG-13 edginess to it that is I don't know if kids would be super into some of this stuff. There's a lot of teeth in this game.
There is a lot of teeth. Yeah.
There's a lot of running around in people's mouths. I'm fine with that, but it's there's some hair. There's a hair level near the end that was I kind of got me all scratchy, itchy. Are there any other gross ones that really stand out in my mind? I can't remember. The problem is I had like I said my psychonautical week. It was just Psychonauts 1 was 2 days. Psychonauts 2 was 7 full days of playing the game because it's so long. And so, but that was 3 weeks since I finished the game, so I'm slightly blurry on parts of it. But that game is crazy. I'm sort of scattered.
One thing that people will either like or not like, I think it depends on how you like your games to flow, is there's a shit ton of cutscenes in this game, a lot of cutscenes.
Yeah.
There's probably a whole animated movie's worth of cutscenes in this game.
Yeah, I think it might be more. I think I saw the all cutscenes, video, and let me just see if I can find it. I think it's well, this one says it's 6 hours long.
6 hours?
Game, movie, all cutscenes, 4.5 hours.
I feel like when
that's
I
probably
watch
including
those,
dialogue,
Yeah, because they include every essential story moment, which can be when you're actually playing the game and someone's talking or something.
Yeah, this does not have any gameplay in it. This is just dialogue and cutscenes. There's maybe a few minutes of gameplay, but yeah, there's a lot of story in this game, which, for some people will be, sort of a thing that gets in the way a little bit.
It could be.
For me, that's a big part of the appeal of a Double Fine game, aka really a Tim Schafer game in this case. The man is known for writing good video games. Yes. I'm here for the writing, in addition to everything else, and the writing is really good all the way through.
Yeah, man. Oh my god.
There's a lot more to the writing than I expected. Not in terms of quantity, even though there is a lot more writing just in general. There's just a lot more going on in the writing than I expected.
Yeah, the story is pretty grand and interesting with twists and turns. There's a huge cast of characters, which I was not expecting. And each character in the game is given quite a lot of time to be built up.
Mm-hmm.
And every voice actor and actress in the game does a fantastic job.
Yeah.
I can't really think of a weak link among the set. Not just for performances, but like, did I like the character? Did I give a shit about their story? Did I want to see whatever troubles they have go away? The answer is like just yes to all of it. Like, it was just all excellent. I enjoyed meeting all of the characters. It's a great game for fans as well.
Oh, because definitely.
In the first game, most of the stuff, like the Psychonauts themselves, the history, who's actually in the gang, how it started, that stuff is very vague.
Yeah, and it's really just like,
2,
one is just like, here's Sasha, here's Mia, here's Ford, and that's it.
Yeah. But in Psychonauts 2, you pretty much meet everyone in the universe.
Yeah.
And they all get a really good amount of time. And what's also so impressive about the story is how interconnected it is. You wouldn't think for a sequel that took 16 years to make that they would tie it so heavily back to the first game because, some people didn't play it. I think there is like a, recap movie thing for people who missed it.
Yeah, it's pretty good as well.
But, if the ending of Psychonauts 1 ends with, what's his name? I can't remember his name. It's the leader of the Psychonauts gets kidnapped.
Right, Bob Zanotto.
That's it, Bob Zanotto.
Yeah.
You don't find out what happens to him until late into Psychonauts 2.
Yeah.
And when I was watching that happen, I was like, oh my god, I had to wait 3 to 4 years for this. Imagine people have been waiting 16 years to find out what happened to Bob.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Like, they're so heavily intertwined that it's kind of bizarre, because I can't imagine a lot of people really want to go back to Psychonauts 1, but for longtime fans, it's a crazy, overarching, and deep story arc.
Yeah.
Like, everything gets explained. You find out why Raz's family is not supposed to go near water. You find out why Ford's mind is all fractured and weird, and it's just so heavily tied into everything set up in Psychonauts 1 that it's kind of crazy.
It is.
It's like, because Psychonauts 2 doesn't really feel like it should have been something that was planned, because like you said, Psychonauts 1 was so hard to get off the ground,
right.
But it feels so seamless that it feels like a perfect 1-2, honestly.
It feels, everything about the game feels effortless in a way that's like, it's kind of shocking considering, how much time has passed, how just like not up and down, how rocky the Double Fine journey has been in terms of just getting their games made, and that includes Psychonauts 2. That it feels like they made Psychonauts 1 and then became experts in making video games and made Psychonauts 2, and no time has passed, but actually almost 2 decades have passed.
Yeah, it's so
in fact,
bizarre.
actually, I think just earlier this year they did have Double Fine had their 20th birthday, which is because they formed the studio and then made the first game. It's wild that they were able to just they didn't miss a beat, and that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, Psychonauts 2 does feel like they designed it around the idea of Psychonauts 3 never happening, because there's so much in Psychonauts 2, it really feels like the entire story and franchise can finish right there. I think I'd love to see a Psychonauts 3, but it's not really necessary.
No,
I
agree.
It feels really concluded and tied up nicely, and 2 is just so good that I just can't imagine fans are like demanding answers or an extra game.
Yeah, I kind of hope. I'm sort of with you. It's like, it'd be fun to see another one, but also I like Double Fine because their games are so varied and weird, and now they have Microsoft money to do whatever they want, which is very exciting. But it definitely feels like one of those things where they knew this was their chance to make the sequel they've been thinking about for 15 years, and they're like, okay, we have to put everything in this because we may never get this opportunity ever again. And in Double Fine's case, they got bought by Microsoft, so they probably could make a Psychonauts 3 if they wanted to without batting an eye, but
I'd love
it doesn't feel like it is needed, because it really does feel wrapped up in a way that not a lot of games do. It's Psychonauts 2 is basically like a platformer epic in terms of scale, like and the story. It's like The Witcher 3 of platformers. It's just
it really is.
It's so massive and varied and long and detailed. When you were talking earlier, the one level and character that I felt was a little disjointed was the early one, the fellow, what's his name, that talks to bees, the cooking show level.
That's the only level I didn't really enjoy that much.
it was mainly just the traversing back and forth I found annoying, even though I quite like a lot of things in that level.
Oh, the context and like the characters were great.
Amazing. The like, I took screenshots and I will have saved them to use one day of the judgment descriptions for the dishes. You're like, surprisingly adequate and like not too terrible and things like that. And then the weird boss fight at the end where you have to force feed them until they're vomiting everywhere. But that was the one level where I was like, I don't really know how this connects to him at all. I saw some interpretations of
it. It was like performance anxiety or something.
Yeah, I definitely sort of got a bit better context after seeing some people point some things out, but all the other ones feel a little more of a cohesive pairing. And that's not to say that that's a bad level. It's just the only level in the game that wasn't incredible, mainly just because it overstays its welcome, I think, just by 5 or 10 minutes. But yeah, every level is just, there's so much going on in every level. And I think we started off on this spike of conversation by talking about the writing and how much more there is to it than it seems. And that's to say that there's it's extremely funny all the way through. Like like it's not laugh out loud hilarious, but it's just,
I laughed a lot.
Oh, I did too. Yeah, it's regularly making me chuckle, and definitely, yeah, there are definitely laugh out loud moments, and it's clever in a way that most things aren't anymore. It reminds me of Portal and Portal 2, and that sort of like,
I think a lot of video game humor relies too much on something being ludicrous,
right,
or something being like meta or ironic all the time.
Or swearing a lot. And
it's like, look, it's a goat flying around in space, or we're going to point the screen and acknowledge that it's a video game and then fart. It's like a lot of that stuff.
Which that's not the case here. And
no, it's actually funny.
That comes
for real.
Right, and that comes from Tim Schafer, who has been writing well-written games for like longer than we've been alive now, I think, like 30-something years. And it shows, and he is the only credited writer on this game as well, which is kind of crazy. I thought there would be more, but I would take that to imply that he just wrote every single thing in the game, which would explain the cohesiveness of it, right? And why it's all so similar. And yeah, so it's extremely funny, but it's also, like you said, the plot and storylines are extremely deep. And then there's also just a lot of good, like, humanity throughout it all. Lots of good empathy and good character moments and good character relationships.
Theme of Psychonauts is like people's flaws, right? That's what you're investigating when you go into their minds.
Yeah, and helping them be more comfortable with those flaws.
And it was much more interesting than Psychonauts 1, which is maybe a bit more focused on mental illness, which obviously is a hard thing to tackle delicately. And you could probably argue that Psychonauts 1 did not do that to the best of its ability, but it was...
There were
16 years ago.
Yeah, and they said as much as well, just before release, Double Fine of 2, they said, looking back, there's definitely some stuff in 1 that's nowadays you're like, ooh, that was...
a little bit, yeah.
A little bit. And I appreciate them putting that, there's a good warning at the start, not a warning, but just like a disclosure at the beginning of 2 as well, which is kind of, it speaks a lot to the thought that goes into it all,
It doesn't seem insensitive, it's a bit just like, stereotypical and like simplified.
It's a bit early 2000s.
It's like the whole schizophrenia is you having two personalities and that's it type of stuff.
Right, yeah. Whereas Psychonauts 2 is not that way, yeah.
It's just like more human. It's about like a band of friends where one friend goes off the deep end and it tears everyone apart and everyone has regrets about how they treated other people. And it's much more human and just about, life and friendship.
Yeah.
But not in a way which is like the stereotypical animated friends forever, friends save everything type of thing. It's like very deep and, just a bit more grounded, but in a fantastical way.
Yeah. I was thoroughly engaged all the way through with the story stuff, which I wasn't in the first game, I will say that. Partially because I missed or I forgot, the intro and the setup to the story because I resumed after a few years, but I was genuinely fascinated to see where things are going, and some of the plot twists are very fun.
They're really cool.
Yeah, and like I said, voice acting is really good. Elijah Wood makes an appearance in this game as well, does a very good job.
Who is he?
Nick John Smith.
Oh, that's Elijah Wood. I love
That's
that guy.
Elijah Wood.
He does a great job.
He does a great job, yeah. Jack Black is in it as well. He
Of
does a great
course.
job. Good singing voice as always. And the rest of the cast is fantastic. One thing so the thing I noticed most immediately when I started playing 2, because I had played 1 through not 24 hours prior, was the smart changes they made to combat and all of the abilities. There are obviously a bunch of new abilities in this game, or a few new abilities, but like right out of the gate you get your telekinesis grab, and as soon as I used it I was like, oh, they made it more like Control now, with the like the levitate ability, or not levitate, whatever it is, the pulling ability in Control, or the lock on with the Psy Blast, or the way, like the combos you can use with the levitation ball.
Yeah.
They were just, every single ability just immediately feels so much better, and more satisfying and more accurate to use versus the first game. The other thing combat related is Psychonauts 1 has no enemy variety. It has the nose, the whatever, the guys that run around and say no.
Sensors or something?
The sensors, yeah. And that's the only enemy in Psychonauts 1.
Oh, really? I don't even remember the combat from the first game.
No, and combat is probably the weakest part of 2, and that's not to say it's bad. It's just that it's just not the main, like there's not a lot of it, which I think is a good thing.
It can feel a bit clumsy at times, I would say.
Yeah, I think for me it was maybe less so that it felt clumsy. It's more so that everything just sort of felt really light. And like there wasn't quite enough feedback on some things. But again, there's so little of it that I never was particularly bothered by it. But
yeah, there's a consistent thing where you are remapping your skills to different buttons. And you can do your best to have like a universal scheme for yourself. Like for me, levitation was on LT. But,
yeah, me too.
And then obviously the shooting's on R1. But eventually you're just going to have to change some of those up because you require different things at different times and there's only 4 buttons you can map to. And then you just sometimes have like this clumsy muscle memory stuff where you think a button's on this thing, but you've had to change it to like slow time because you need to also have blah, blah, blah. And I think the remapping stuff was a little confusing and it just sometimes felt a little bit clumsy and I was like tripping over myself a little bit.
I agree, yeah. Clumsy is the word I would use. It's I don't know what a better solution is.
It's not a big deal.
But yeah, having to switch things around a lot was a bit tiresome at times.
Some of the hitboxes felt a little bit weird for getting hit as well.
I did notice that as well. But they added a lot of enemies to this game. Thank God, because I had just played like 9 hours of Psychonauts 1 and all you ever do is shoot the guys and they're just running and he's like, no. And that's it. And this has like a dozen different enemies and they're all quite different, which was nice to see. And there's some good... I wish the combat was as good as everything else, because there's good variety and good encounter potential, I think. It's just that, whatever. It's just not... The combat, it's not a shooter, it's not a brawler, it's just the combat sort of exists and is fine. It never got in my way. And it doesn't occupy a huge amount of the runtime. It's I think very sparingly used and placed well, and really I don't know. There's maybe like 10% of that game is combat, maybe 15. I don't know. It's a very small percentage. You're primarily just running around and exploring, and I was glad for that. But they made a lot of good improvements to the combat. It's just that the combat's maybe the one part that feels like it didn't progress 16 years. It was more like, this is like 4 or 5 years, late 2000s, not 2021 type standards, but I wasn't too bothered.
It's still much improved.
Yeah, definitely, because the combat felt rough in the first game. It was probably the weakest part of that game as well, but it stands out more because it's 16 years old, and if there's one area that games have gotten really good at in the last few years, it's combat and feedback and all those things. And it's mostly there in this game, but not 100%.
I would say I don't really have a lot more else to talk about. I feel like when we are positive on games, there's less to say.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
We're better at complaining than we are at praising.
Yeah.
But I would say one like really small nitpick, which is honestly outside of the like kind of mild combat. This is like the only real negative I have, and it's really not a big one. I think we both felt this way about It Takes Two, but like It Takes Two, there isn't really, when it comes to like the levels, there isn't like a clear progression in like quality. They're just like all there, and they're all pretty good. It just doesn't feel like the game's getting any more complicated or better. It's like a very stable, positive level of quality. But there's just something about this new thing where like the best level in the game is like 2 levels in, and then the rest are like a little worse but still good. It would just, I don't know. I don't know what I'm looking for when I nitpick about this stuff, but I just was maybe hoping for like the last level to feel bigger and grander. Maybe that's what it's missing, but just every level in Psychonauts 2 is good, very good, but it just doesn't feel like anything's getting like bigger or better or more complicated or like bigger in scale. Just everything just feels like a solid 8 out of 10 level, except for Psy Kings, which is like the 3rd level in, and it's fucking unbelievably good. And it's not really
level, really. I can't
really
you can do them in different orders. I definitely don't think I got to Psy King until like halfway through that game.
Actually, I think that might be after. No, it's one of Ford's. It's when you go to the mail room.
But yeah, it's like the first part of Ford's. I think what I did is I spent a lot of time in the hub areas at the Mother Lobe and surrounding areas.
Yeah.
So maybe it felt like it was further in. But yeah, I know what you mean. There, It Takes Two is the perfect comparison. There was no massive crescendo that you would hope.
Yeah.
But every level is great and super creative and fun and fascinating. So it's sort of, it's like, I'm not complaining.
No.
But I know I did like the very last bit of the final level of the boss fight where it becomes like a giant like Godzilla brawler, which was
yes, that was sick. Yeah,
that was hilarious. But I know what you mean. Yeah, because in It Takes Two, the B level was the best level in the game.
Yeah,
and that was like the 3rd level, and then there were 5 more after that, and they were all great. But yeah, I definitely know what you mean. Yeah, the one thing I feel like the one thing that I really wish they had, because they're really good about quality of life stuff in here, except for collectibles.
Okay.
I want to 100% this game, but I have one friggin' figment missing on Psy Kingdom or Psy King's level, and I will never find that one figment because there's no way to point me in the right direction. There's no like buzzing when you get close to one. There's just one little brightly colored thing in this bright ass impossible to spot figments level, and there's like, I think it's 285 in that level, and I'm missing one. And you have to get every single collectible in that game to 100% it and get to level 102 or whatever it is and get the achievements for it. And I decided to be good, and I'm like, I can't do this. I'm going to hate the game if I try to do this, so I just didn't bother.
Yeah.
It's just, that would be something that, like in, oh god, what game was it? It's fairly recent. Oh, in Ratchet. Like, late in Ratchet, you get the thing that just is like, we're just going to show you where every single thing is on your map now, so you can just do everything before you finish the game. I wish that this had this maybe after the game. It was just like, because you get the weird gizmo that shows you where thought bubbles are, and he puts on his dorky headphones and his tracker and starts looking for them. I wish maybe that would get an upgrade, that's just like, you pull that out now and it'll take you close to the figments you're missing. But there is no way to know what you're missing or to find what you're missing other than thoroughly combing through every single level, and some of those levels are huge and sprawling and have offshoots of them. So that was the one thing that I was not disappointed with, sort of just annoyed with, and like,
Yeah, I'll be honest, I wasn't compelled to be thorough with the collectibles at all, really. I played the levels, and obviously whenever I saw anything, I made sure to get it. But when it comes to, doing a super thorough sweep, I don't know, I looked into the skills, and I wasn't really compelled by the rewards that much, so I got everything I could see. and then just finished the game and was like, fuck yeah, that was awesome. I don't want to burden myself with being fatigued by stuff or
That's fair. I was definitely I was definitely more thorough than that, but after a certain, like I 100%ed probably.
You're quite a completionist when it comes to stuff you like.
Yeah, exactly. When I really like something, I just like having an excuse to keep playing it, so I'll happily 100% it. But I think I got like maybe 70% of the levels 100%ed, and then I was like, I'm gonna stop. And that you mentioned it as well, and it brings up another point, is that the skills and pins, I think is what they call the skills. You only have 3 slots for them. I wish you could have more.
Yeah, me too.
Some of them are superfluous cosmetic things, like changing the color of the levitation ball, and I feel like that shouldn't occupy a slot that other skills can go into. I don't know. I would have liked to have seen another 3 probably.
Yeah, that system wasn't that interesting overall, I would say.
No, and I agree as well. Like most of the skills were not interesting. Like I read through them all early, and I was like, okay, I'll take the glass cannon one, which deals more damage.
Me too.
Yeah, and I'll take the one that I think the Psy Blast. I don't remember. I think it shatters on impact or something. It was basically just like, give me the 2 that deal more damage, and also, or the glass cannon.
I did the one that gives you more
magnetic.
Okay.
Absorbing things, so you don't have to run directly over them, and then get more currency from everything.
I went more melee damage and more Psy Blast chains.
Okay, I think I did play with the Psy Blast for a while, but yeah, there are like 20, let's say 20 skills that you can unlock, maybe even more, and maybe 4 or 5 of them were interesting to me. It was more like 3 that were interesting to me. So yeah, I would have liked to have seen a little more, a little more interesting skills in there, but maybe different playstyles. They say that when they introduce the system, they're like, hey, these skills are here to enhance your playstyle, whatever that may be. And there are definitely there's a fair amount of variety and combination options for the skills and how to use them in combat. But I do think that whole system could have been just more exciting. But it was one of those things where I unlocked them, put them on, and then just sort of forgot about it for most of the game. I would say
the whole vendor system felt a little bit like I didn't need to use it that much, or the currency I was picking up, I would buy some they're like lollipops, candy pops that fill your health. I think that's the only thing I ever really bought from the shop, honestly.
I would buy 5, and then like 10 hours later, I would buy another 5.
Yeah,
and then the game was done. Yeah, I agree for sure. That whole
not a big deal, but
no, one of those things that could have been improved or made more interesting. But
man, apart from that, it's just when it comes to like the core pillars of a video game, the gameplay, the writing, the visuals, music, voice acting, etc. Everything is just a fucking home run to a production standard I never anticipated from Psychonauts 2 in a million years.
Yeah, I was in awe of Psychonauts 2 for pretty much its entire runtime because of just how... That's why when we started at the top of this, I was like, is it AAA? It feels like a AAA video game to me now. Like, it is one of the most polished, most well put together games I've played in years.
I think it felt bigger than Ratchet, I would say.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And it was more polished than Ratchet. Obviously, you had more problems with Ratchet than I did, but there was nothing aside from the little stutter issue that the PC Game Pass PC specific version had early on. There was nothing. There was not a single oddity, bug, crash, moment where I was like, what am I doing? Where am I going? Is this broken? Nothing. Like it was just so smooth all the way through.
Yeah.
It's like the God of War 2018 of platformers.
It is.
It's just like it's just like the most high budget, high production, creative, and impressive AAA feeling thing in quite a few years. And I would have never in a million years predicted that from Psychonauts 2.
Wow.
Wild, crazy.
What a cool surprise.
I kind of just want to go replay it right now.
I was thinking that, I really was thinking that.
So that's, good on them. I'm just so happy for them. It's such a feel-good release. Because Double Fine, I've followed Double Fine fairly closely over the last 10 years, I would say. I think mainly just because they were pretty tight with Giant Bomb in the early days, and so there was a lot of Double Fine presence on that site early on. And then I was sick like 6 or 7 years ago and watched the entirety, full length of the Broken Age production documentary, which is like a 20-part series.
Jesus.
And is the most... They have a production crew embedded with them, sort of like NoClip, but I think Double Fine pays for it all. And it's the Two Player Productions is their name. It is the Broken Age one is the most in-depth, honest, raw account of video game development ever made. There are you see meetings of them deciding they have to lay people off. You see them figuring out the art style for Broken Age, all of that. And it really, I don't know, just when you play their games and then watch that, you're like, oh, Double Fine, I get it. I'm attached to them. And to see them now owned by Microsoft, they're finally stable after 20 years of struggling, and they put out this thing is just, it's amazing. And I believe Psychonauts 2, later this year, they have a similar documentary coming out. So we'll be able to see, because it was all a Fig project initially, right? So they had to, part of their pitch was, we're obviously going to document this the way we did with Broken Age. So I think they have years of footage that's going to come out at some point. So, and I really look forward to seeing that. But yeah, Double Fine, they've always been really cool, and it's just great to see them succeed and put out easily their best game ever.
Oh my god, yeah.
And I have no idea how they top this. I don't know that they need to. Their next game doesn't need to be quite this good, but if it is, we're in for some real treats over the next 10 years from Double Fine if they keep at this level of quality, because Psychonauts 2 is just fucking crazy good.
I hope people slowly start to find it, because obviously Psychonauts 1 was a cult classic, but Psychonauts 2 is technically, depending on your situation, maybe not behind much of a paywall. Most people who have an Xbox or maybe even a good PC are probably aware of the Game Pass app and engaging in Game Pass. And if you are one of those people, you should absolutely 100% play this game. Even if this genre is not for you, if you already have Game Pass, there's no reason not to. It's one of the best games of the year, and one of the best 3D platformers ever made.
Yeah, 100%.
It's crazy.
Even if you're on PlayStation, it's worth full price.
It is.
I would
sell, but
I will buy this game on Steam one day so that I own it. I would have no problems having paid full price for this game. There is that special level of I paid $3 for this, haha, and it's the best thing ever. Wow, what a crazy thing. That does sort of. There's fun to that, but also if I had paid full price for this, I can tell you right now, I would have been 100% satisfied because it's one of the best games. Yeah, like you said, not of this year, of the last few years, one of the best 3D platformers ever made. Play Psychonauts 2, please. It's so good.
It's brilliant, man. It's just brilliant.
It's amazing. Yeah.
So moving on, the next game will be Deathloop from Arcane Studios. We played a lot of Arcane stuff. A lot of it. Maybe
all of their modern
it.
stuff. Well, yeah, I don't really know what. I don't know if they really, they did exist before Dishonored 1, but not, I mean, come on.
Are they the people who did Dark Messiah of Might and Magic?
I think so, yeah.
That game is actually pretty fun. I think I played 4 or 5 hours of it. It gets repetitive because it's old, but
yeah,
it's pretty goofy and funny. Terrible, terrible game title, my god, though.
They've been around since 1999.
Yeah.
But they only published 2 games in the 2000s and then Dishonored in 2012. So Dishonored really was their thing,
Definitely.
Yeah, we played Dishonored, Dishonored 2, Prey, Mooncrash, Death of the Outsider, and I would say, to varying degrees, like all those games.
Yeah. Is Mooncrash and Death of the Outsider the same, main studio? Do they have spin-off studios? I wasn't sure about that.
They have, I believe the way it works is they have Arcane Austin, Texas, and Arcane Lyon, France. And Lyon is the Dishonored team, So this is Arcane Lyon's Deathloop as well. And then Austin is Prey and Redfall coming up. I believe that's how it is.
Oh. So was Mooncrash the main studio?
And Mooncrash, yeah, Prey and Mooncrash were Austin. I don't think there's like a main or a second. There's just two, yeah. Prey and Mooncrash and Redfall are Austin, Texas. Dishonored 2, Death the Outsider, and Deathloop are Lyon, I believe.
Oh. Okay.
Which makes sense.
It does.
Because this game is very Dishonored-like.
It is very Dishonored-like. Maybe we should explain the basic concept of the game before we dive in, because it's a bit of a weird one. But also, I feel like this game had a huge marketing budget, and I feel like everyone in the world has heard about this game, maybe against their will. Because, wow, this game was everywhere. I don't know, you might have better, more successful ad block than me when it comes to
I know it got, like, sort of memed on for showing up at every single Sony show.
Yeah.
And I know they put out a lot of trailers. I think to the point that like the Deathloop Twitter account was joking about how many trailers they had on launch day. But yeah, there were definitely a lot of trailers. I didn't watch any of them except for the one at the PS5 event like a year and a half ago. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that looks like an Arcane game. I'll play that. And I didn't really know. I honestly had all I knew about Deathloop going into it was there were like a half dozen maps, and
I don't think I even knew that.
I think I'd read an interview where like we have a small number of maps, and you have to assassinate the targets, and also you can be invaded by human players, and that's like all I knew. And there, I mean, you know, that is totally accurate and a
pretty much
basic
the game
summary of it.
Yeah.
But there's definitely a lot more to all of those things than it sounds, I would say.
Yeah. But it's different than I imagined in my head. That's what I would say.
Do you have is that enough of a summary? I don't know.
You're
on an island. There's a time loop. When you die, the time loop restarts, or when the day ends, the time loop also restarts. And there are 4 maps, and there are targets that you have to assassinate on each map. And you sort of have to figure out how to assassinate them all in one loop. And when you do that, you beat the game.
Yeah.
There we go. That's Deathloop.
Yeah.
And you get the blink ability from Dishonored. And
they called it Shift, the bastards.
They called it Shift.
How dare they? How dare they?
There's lore reasons for that.
I don't give a shit about that lore. I can't believe they changed the name of Blink. How dare they?
I know. Shift. It is literally just Blink.
What
Even
the hell is
UI,
Shift?
like when you get it onto a ledge that you're going to climb up onto, that's exactly the same. Yeah.
God, how dare they? Might as well just start with my overall feelings, and then we can break it down.
I have I want to do the same thing.
Okay. I'm interested in how you feel about it. I know you watched me stream some of it, so maybe you have some suspicions about how I feel about it. I don't know. But I would say that I had a lot of like really good individual moments in Deathloop, but I would say that overall it didn't really come together for me in most facets of the game. I would say I like it overall, but also I'm kind of disappointed by it. I'm gonna be honest. I'm a little disappointed. I'm quite disappointed, actually.
I would say I like it. I suspect I like it more than you do. Mm-hmm. But I would also pretty much agree with all of that exactly. I would say I had a lot of really good moments with it.
Yeah.
I think conceptually it's amazing, and I think it's about 80% of the way to being one of the coolest games ever made. But I agree, it did not ever. There was never a moment where it all went click and the snowball happened, and I was like, Deathloop is incredible. And yeah, I agree with you pretty much exactly. I would also like to say that I think this will be a chat where there's a lot of critiquing.
Oh, a lot, yeah.
And for my part, it comes from a place of really liking a lot of it. And the critiques are things that I wish had been done a little bit better or differently, and that would have allowed it to go like, from an 80 to 100 in my head in terms of liking it. And it's I sometimes these chats where we have a game like this that has a lot of criticism, I feel like we sometimes miss saying that, like, hey, I did like a lot of this. I mean, I spent a lot of time playing it and I enjoyed the majority of my time with it. Also, though, part of it, I feel like I would probably be hotter on the game in like a month or two once I have forgotten the unbelievable multitude of technical problems I had with it.
Yeah,
which we'll get to. And because, some games you have technical problems with, and you sort of never regard the game positively ever, because also other parts of it weren't good. Like Fallout 4, technical mess, but I've forgotten the technical problems and I realized, Fallout 4, I never care for it. But other games, and I think this is one of them, I'll be like, the technical problems were a huge bummer, but now that in 3 months from now, when maybe we talk about it, I don't know, I might say like, now that I've sort of forgotten those technical issues, I'm able to better appreciate the majority of the time that I had with it being quite positive. So that's what I would say as a preface, I suppose, to what I suspect will be a fairly critical and lengthy discussion about Deathloop.
Yeah, I will say I'm definitely more negative than you.
Yeah, yeah. I figured, yeah.
I'm definitely more negative.
Yeah, I like a lot about it, and I wish I loved it as a whole.
I like some of it. I do like some of it. We got to start somewhere. Maybe just get the technical stuff out the way. Maybe just start because it's kind of outside of the the game.
Sure.
I'll just quickly say, because I know you had a bit of a rougher time, that it was rough for me, but it was mostly just weird frame and performance stuff. Very like inconsistent and unsmooth like frame transitions, if that makes any sense. Like you can feel the game chugging and feeling odd, even though the frames weren't dipping that low. It's just, again, I'm not what do you call it? Who's the breakdown
Digital
guy?
Foundry.
I'm not Digital Foundry. I don't really understand the in and outs, but I know that many games dip from 100 frames to 70 to 60 all the time, depending on how busy the game is. That a lot of times you don't feel that as heavily,
especially when we have G-Sync monitors, right? And good computers. The it's a problem with the PC port above 60 FPS. It doesn't pace the frames correctly, so it might be rendering all of them, but they're displaying incorrectly, and that gives it a feeling of stutteriness. And then also, I think this was just patched, but the mouse would not move appropriately through those frames either, so the mouse was stuttering outside of the game stuttering, in a sense. None of it is actual stutters, it's more just like presentation of frames.
So I had the mouse thing, so I copied your settings you sent over in Discord, and that's when I had the mouse thing. And then when I reverted it to default settings, I didn't have the mouse thing, but the inconsistent frame stuff I had throughout the whole game. Yeah. And, eventually you do get kind of blind to it, but it's still it just doesn't feel silky smooth, and it should, because it's a nice fast FPS game, and you kind of want that.
Yeah, and it's not like the most visually astonishing game ever. It doesn't look like there should be problems to it or major performance drops. And there definitely are, like, I mean, there were areas, I think, in Updom where I'm getting down to like 80 FPS on a 3090, and it's sort of like,
for sure.
Like this engine, and it's the Dishonored 2 engine, and I remember Dishonored 2 being exactly the same on PC at the time. It was just like, this is not running the way it should be based on how it looks, and it's not smooth, and it never really got there on my PC either. But yeah, so there is a certain amount of just PC, like small PC annoyances when you go above 60 FPS.
Some console issues as well. I'm not sure if you looked into that. I did hear there was some like PS5 crashing or something like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I didn't pay much attention to
Sure.
to that stuff. But then crashing was the main thing for me. There was an RTX related crash, it seems, and for me it happened, let's say 90% of the time when I would edit a weapon trinket, my loadout for weapon trinkets in the loadout screen, my game would hard crash. And that probably happened 8 times or so, and then I found someone, like, I was probably 12 hours in at that point. I saw someone saying, it's ray tracing, turn off ray tracing stuff, which makes me sad because I have a good card. I want to be able to see that stuff, even if it is subtle. Turn that off. The crashing went away until it didn't. And I stopped crashing in the loadout screen and instead started crashing mid-missions. So I had one crash when we were doing our invasions, where you invaded me, and then 15 minutes into that or so, my game crashed for no reason. It was just mid-traversal and combat. And then I was playing, and I was 30 minutes in, discovering a ton of new stuff, and mid-mission, mid-fight, hard crash, same error code as every time. Again, later on, maybe like 15 minutes into a mission, I was saying passwords into a microphone, to open a door. And the first time you do that, it takes you out of... It puts you into sort of like cutscene mode where your weapon's lower and you can't move or interact or do anything. And he said the passwords, and I was never taken out of cutscene mode. And so I was just stuck, unable to move or do anything. I had to go back to the main menu and lose that progress. And yeah, it really sucked because it's a single-player, story-driven exploration game. It's an arcane game. And they're literally called immersive sims for a reason. It's about getting immersed in the area and spending long chunks of time. And also, there's no save progress when you're in a mission. You have to complete the mission and leave the mission to log all that progress because of the online nature and the very, very light roguelite-ish thing that they have going on there. Means that there's no mid-mission checkpoints. And so having a hard crash just sucks the energy out of it. Even if it's a hard crash after everything's been saved, it just sucks. It takes you out of the mood, and I'm just like, I'm done. I'm done playing for today. Like, I'm just not going to come back to it. And I think it's probably the most a game has ever crashed on me.
Wow, yeah.
Fallout 4 was similar. Cyberpunk, I think I crashed once in Cyberpunk.
Yeah.
I know other people had many more, but that was a game where saving and reloading fixed every problem I encountered, pretty much.
Worse than Cyberpunk is not something you ever want to hear. That it was worse than Cyberpunk in any technical reality.
Yeah, I think I had 8 to 10 hard crashes, and then at least one... No, I had 2 times where the scripting / I got stuck and had to save and reload, including one of them that happened in my final loop run at the very end of the last in the evening to clearing out Updom. I had to save and restart that mission because scripting thing didn't trigger. And I spent a lot longer with it to get through than you. I think it was like 24 hours, but that was we're talking like a dozen crashes in 24 hours of playtime,
that's
which
a lot.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And the worst part is that it, aside from sucking the energy out of a run, or of a session, it makes it gave me that feeling like the thing was going to explode at any moment. And
it's like an anxiety thing. And
I haven't had that in a long time since Fallout 4 really stands out. I was going to say it felt like I was playing a Bethesda game, but I literally am, except I mean a Bethesda game studio game and not a Bethesda published game. But
it's leaking across.
Yeah, it's just that feeling of not wanting to poke because you're worried it's going to explode is really bad in a game that is about poking at things. So I played, I don't know, 12, 14 hours in the first few days of it coming out, and then it took me another 8 days to finish it because every day I just was less inspired to finish it because of the technical issues, among other things as well.
Yeah, I was going to say
that we'll get to.
It's
not the only reason, but the PC port sucks. They need to do better, and I get, I'm more forgiving as well because of COVID. I get it, but I can forgive a couple of crashes, but when it's this many, I know I got unlucky abnormally, so I'm usually pretty lucky actually with technical stuff, but it really hampered my enjoyment of the entire thing, I would say, from start to finish, which is a real bummer.
Moving on.
Moving on to the actual game.
let's just quickly get something out of the way that didn't seem to bother you that much, but I really thought the opening hours of the game were a complete mess when it comes to introducing you to how the game works. I don't want to dive too deep into it. It's a pretty involved game when it comes to systems. There's 4 maps, there's 4 times of day per map, there's 7 targets, there's a PvP system, there's powers, there's guns, and all this like RPG shit. But I don't know how to, I'm not a game designer. I don't know how I would have made it gentler on the player when it comes to getting to grips with everything. But all I'm going to say is I don't think they did a good job. It took me 4 hours before I had any idea what the hell was going on. And I was mostly just a little bit annoyed for the first 3 to 4 hours because I just didn't know what the fuck was going on. I didn't know how anything worked. There was like 900 documents, 17 menus of leads for guns and all this shit, and it was just horribly overwhelming in a way which I found not enjoyable. The game was definitely, its premise was cool enough to push me forward, and I was enjoying a lot of it enough to, just push through. It kind of reminds me of my opening with Obra Dinn. I was also pretty frustrated at the opening couple of hours of Obra Dinn as well. But I'm not gonna dwell on it. I pushed through. I got past it, and then eventually I did understand how the game worked. But I just don't think that part of the game was handled very well. I think that's all I have to say about that. Don't know how to make it better. But the first 3 to 4 hours are quite a lot and confusing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I didn't find it confusing, but I agree that it was a lot. It was more so, I found myself overwhelmed, but in a good way, actually, where I think my brain just, I don't know, sort of figured it out and understood, I think, what they were doing quicker than I thought it would. And I was pretty quickly like, okay, yeah, I get it. This is a lot, but like, okay, I get it. And I'm intrigued and into it. But yeah, I it's pretty easy to see how it would be not fun, because it is sort of just like beating you over the head with information, which, again, introducing systems in games seems really difficult, and I don't know exactly how you do it in a way that's smooth.
It is this format is like definitely new. It's like this weird new puzzle game type that's come out. Obra Dinn, Outer Wilds, now Deathloop, where instead of being like, here is, the Portal format, where here's one puzzle, then you do it, and here's puzzle 2. It's like, here is the entire fucking game, and it's like a tangled ball of like red yarn, and you just have to like put your hand in and start like untangling everything. When it's that stuff, it just makes my head want to explode at the beginning.
I'm a weirdo. I literally enjoy untangling tangled things, okay, genuinely.
Okay, yeah.
It's satisfying.
Yeah, I'm the guy who, when like you have tangled wires, I will just get frustrated and pull as hard as I can until something breaks.
Right.
That's me. I'm like, this fucking sucks.
Yeah.
Not Deathloop. I was talking about the wires, but
it's a good comparison though. It's perfect, honestly. It says a lot about the brains. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, we can move past that because, if you like puzzle games, if you played Obra Dinn, Outer Wilds, those games are pretty similar, where at the beginning you don't know what the hell's going on. You just kind of have to deal with that shit and push through. And I don't know if there's a way to avoid it in this format.
No.
I don't know.
And I think to springboard us in a direction here, I think referring to it amongst other puzzle games, I think is accurate in a sense. The first, dozen hours of the game, I regarded it as a puzzle game in a lot of ways, because
Are we going there?
I think so.
Okay,
I think because it presents itself as a puzzle game.
Sure.
It puts all the pieces of a puzzle game in front of you and lets you start to put the puzzle together for quite a while, and then at a certain point you realize, oh, it's a linear action game, and there is literally no puzzle to solve whatsoever. And I mean, that's probably the biggest disappointment I have with the entire game.
Oh, yeah. Massively.
I just think, for people that haven't played it, it's essentially, imagine a Hitman level. It's basically a Hitman level in a lot of ways. Except imagine you have to go through 4 Hitman levels to beat it. And if it was a Hitman game, they would just say, hey, we have these story missions that you can follow, and you can, you just follow the objective marker and you get to see and do a dumb assassination. And those are very good and entertaining. And they have that in Deathloop. and a couple of them are pretty fun. But what Hitman has is also, you can just kill the target in probably 1 trillion ways, and interactions and little clockwork things that you can, domino effects that you can happen, and you can plan out and execute these targets in any way you want. And what I thought the game was for quite a while was that, except it was, here are 4 levels with these targets, and here's this A path you could follow, but you could also spend, 12 hours learning each map, learning the routines of the targets, and then figuring out the perfect snowball, connection and executing your amazing murder heist. But that's why I say it's like and of the way to being one of the neatest things ever, because I think that concept is incredible. And in my head, pulling that off and having my way to beat the loop be completely different from yours would have been one of the coolest things of the year. Yeah. And the reality is it's 110% not that at all. No, it's literally just follow the objective marker to beat the game. And you can change the way you kill the character like a tiny little bit, but it's always in the same place. I killed Alexis Dorsey by dropping him into his meat grinder.
Oh, that's cool, yeah.
Yeah, and I found a way to ID him that was very non-intrusive. It's with his music. He has a song that you can put on, and it identifies him without alerting anyone, and then he walks and does his stand-up comedy routine or whatever the fuck, and I dropped him into the thing. And you could just also shoot him in the head and run away. But that's about the only variance you get, and that's the biggest bummer for me with the entire game.
Yeah, there's pretty much no freedom in how you tackle the objectives. I would say, actually, that's not entirely true. The choices is mostly the order in which you discover the final route.
Right.
But when it comes time to execute the final loop, which should be the climax of the game, there is only one route to follow. And being honest, it's not very interesting in my opinion.
No, not at all, yeah.
I was expecting, I don't know, some sort of unique mechanic, something different to happen. But you're kind of just shooting people you've already shot before. Mm-hmm. And the visionaries, which are the targets in the game, they're not that interesting to fight, and they're not all that strong because they're mostly just people.
Yeah.
Which can be fine, but I would imagine, or I would hope that the way you get to them could be difficult or challenging. But that's not difficult either.
Yeah.
So
the only person that's tricky is identifying Alexis at the party.
Yeah, but for me in my final loop, he just kind of came out of a door and I shot him in the face.
I
didn't even know it was him.
Yeah.
I didn't even know it was him.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, he just came out of a door and I just shot him in the head, and you've beat Deathloop basically. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
great.
But it's especially weird to me because it's Arcane.
Mm-hmm.
Because Prey and Dishonored, but especially Prey, which granted is seemingly a different team, but Prey is one of the most open-ended games you can play.
Yeah.
I mean, you can kill literally everyone in that game, and the game still manages to tell its story to you somehow, and you can go about all these things in such a different way. And
Dishonored is pretty open, kind of.
It is, yeah.
Options.
I mean, Dishonored is at least linear levels that you progress through, but the way you can get through them is so varied, and that is also the case here with Deathloop in terms of exploration and the unraveling of the ball of yarn. But
yes,
when it comes to finishing the fight, if you will, it's just push left stick forward and occasionally pull shoot the guy.
Yeah, I think for me, another big problem when it comes to maybe more specifically the end loop, I feel like they just didn't quite balance the power curve in this game. There just wasn't much. I just wasn't worried about anything going wrong in the final loop because I was so strong and so powerful. And maybe this will transition into combat or something, because everything kind of entangles in on itself. I will say, I don't want to, go in a different direction, but if you want to have a good time, I would recommend not picking up the silenced SMG. Because that gun fucking breaks everything. I don't know what they were thinking putting that in the game, because all they have to do is remove that gun and everything becomes a little bit more interesting, because you can't just silence headshot everyone in the entire game. Which includes, by the way, some of the visionaries, because you can get a power where you can link them up to different people, and whatever you do to the other people can kill, affects everyone that's connected, kind of like a weird voodoo doll power. So you can just connect any powerful visionary to some little scrub, and then just shoot the scrub in the head, and then the visionary dies. With a silenced pistol. It kind of feels like the way I broke Metal Gear Solid 5 for myself when I found the silenced sniper.
Mm-hmm.
And, I tried to do some experimentation using the powers, but, when it comes down to the final loop in the game, I'm not really in the mood to take risks, because it's supposed to be the crescendo. It's supposed to be the finale, and I want to beat the game. I'm kind of excited to get there. So, yeah, I had all these powers. I had a silenced pistol, and I just walked through the end of the game, and then it just ends. And I was like, oh, huh. I really came to miss the feeling of, like, being threatened from Dishonored and Prey. I really missed the tension and being scared. I was just, like, never scared. Even of Juliana, which I know we'll get to in a point, but because I had 3 times respawns, and I just had to kill her once.
Right.
Again, we'll
save
it's
Juliana,
all coming. It's all merging together, but
yes, yeah. No, the power thing is definitely a note I have as well, and I think, again, so much of, like, the first half of my time with this was so good, and the second half is just where everything just starts to get, like, meh. And the second half of the game is where I'm just like, I by then I had the suppressed pistol or the suppressed SMG for quite a long time. I actually found it pretty early, and it was really fun for a while. But then when you get to, like, I'm spending another 8 hours going through these levels, it's just like I was just bombing around, just going boop 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 boop, and just shooting everyone, they're dropping dead, no one's being alerted. There's just zero tension, but in the first half I did have good moments of tension. Too. And that was when the game was at its best. And
yes, absolutely.
Part of the ease comes from mouse and keyboard. It makes it very easy to you're going to hit every headshot you take. But you have all these powers. You can be invisible. I have the upgrade for invisibility where if I stop moving, I don't drain the power, so I can just sit there completely invisible, which again,
that's cool.
It's fun.
I lost that one.
Oh, damn. It's fun. It's like all the things individually are fun. The suppressed SMG is fun, but when you put it all together and then you're going through the levels over and over again, it just becomes like mundane busy work, and the AI are really bad, which again, I think part of that is fine. It works for a time, but after a certain point, you're just like, I wish I could get in like an interesting engagement here. Because also the Juliana players are fucking terrible as well, which we'll talk about. There's no sense of progression. You are getting so much more powerful, and that's fun. And there's fun to be had with like the ease with which you're able to navigate the world and things like that. But there is never a roadblock put in your way ever to test your challenge.
It's hard to say if, like, can you even make a game where you're super powerful but also an assassin? Like, how does that even like go together? Because it just doesn't feel like it works. Like, how do you make a game about sneaking up and taking people down when you're an absolute powerhouse? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, because like Hitman is smart about where it's just like, this is just a dude.
Yeah, and it's always been like that in assassin games, really.
Yeah, and if you get killed, like, you can get killed really quickly, and you can get killed quickly in Deathloop, except you have 3 lives, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's a lot, by the way. It's a lot of lives.
Oh, it's insane. Yeah,
Don't you get one back if you kill a visionary or something?
Maybe.
I definitely got one back when I killed Juliana once, but I couldn't tell if that's because she killed me first.
I'm not sure. Yeah, but yeah, even if you had no spare life, and if you just died, you died. I would have only died maybe like 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
If I only had the 1 life to work with, but I had 3, and I think with 3 lives, I think I died once to a Juliana.
I think I died.
And that was it.
Twice or 3 times. One of them, I yeeted myself off a cliff.
Right. Oh, yes, that was a good clip. Yeah. That was funny.
I killed myself.
But yeah, there's... And again, I feel like if the finale was you executing your own plan, that would nullify so many of these problems. Because it wouldn't be about getting power checked. It would be about executing your amazing plan. But it's not. It's just... You just start following the pointers, and you're clicking on everything, and everything's falling dead as you walk by, and then the credits roll, and there's just no sense of progress or payoff at all, really, I would say, which is a problem.
I think my biggest disappointment of the entire year in gaming was when I had this Word document, and I was really excited. I had it all laid out. It's like, okay, I've got to get Harriet in the morning, and I do this thing with the fireworks. And then you get to a certain point and a cutscene starts. And he's like, all right, in the morning, I'm going to go and I'm going to give Harriet a visit, pop her in the head. And then I actually can't remember how Cole sounds like. So
he doesn't sound like that, but he's an amazing... Just side note, the voice actor for Cole does an amazing job. He's incredible. Yeah. But yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
I'm not going to say it all, but they list out exactly what you do in a cutscene. It's not just like waypoints. They just spell it out. When you get to the end of the game, or ready to do the end of the game, they just tell you how to do it. And I had this Word document out, and I was like, I kind of like it when I was like making my plan, and I was like quite excited about doing it. And then they just spell it out in a cutscene, a high production cutscene. It's like, what? What's the point of this entire game? Like, aren't I supposed to be working this out? And obviously the answer was no.
No,
I guess not.
That's the thing. Yeah,
like, these guys made Moon Crash? I don't understand.
Yeah, you're working it out until you're not.
Yeah.
Like, I took notes for this as well. I wrote with a pen on paper. And I think it's the first time I've ever taken notes in it for a first-person shooter, which I thought was really cool. I'm like, okay, there are, these little things that aren't tracked that I want to investigate. Like, the complex, there's a crank wheel in the lab at the entrance. Okay, so that's a note to myself about later.
Yeah,
or there are a few codes. Sometimes there are codes that change every run, so they're not added to your notes. And yeah, the very top of my list, first thing written down, Harriet - morning ?
Yeah.
Frank, evening fireworks ? Fia, Charlie, they're flooding, and then I stopped taking those notes because by the 10-hour mark I realized, oh, this is not. I'm not planning anything out, and
no, there's nothing to plan.
Yeah, and then similarly, I stopped taking notes at a certain point as well with regards to interesting mysteries, side things that I wanted to investigate, and this was much very near the end of my playthrough that I stopped just jotting little reminders down, because you pretty quickly realize that they're not worth solving in terms of in-game rewards. There's nothing to get. There are 3 or 4 unique weapons which are cool, and I went and got those.
Yeah, they're cool.
But there's this whole there's the class pass in Updom, and I'm like, okay, that's interesting. I know how to get a class pass now, which I only discovered very near the end of the game. Or there's the guy that gets killed by Harriet during her morning spiel, and he's the mask maker. I could never figure that
out, by the way. I couldn't even see where he was.
He's the one on the crane being lowered into the gas, and so you have to stop him from being. Yes, they say his name. They say, if you get to her sermon very quickly, she says,
I kept shooting that guy. I didn't know that was him.
Yeah. And so you can save him, and then you come back at noon, and he's alive.
Do you get a mask for Alexis's party if you do that?
Oh, no, I don't think so. I think you just get a purple trinket.
Oh, I thought you get a wolf mask.
No, I don't believe so. I haven't done it yet. I will still do it. I need to get footage anyways. But I'm pretty sure all you get is a purple trinket because I can hear the purple trinket in his locked room.
Right.
And that's the thing. I like the idea that maybe you'd be able to get the wolf mask and then you can just walk into the party and walk around the party. Yeah. But I don't think that's the case at all. And I think that just further...
But they keep hinting at the wolf mask.
Exactly.
All over the game.
Part of me wonders if they, a year and a half ago, let's say, realized that they just can't spend 2 more years doing the work to make this the thing that they had originally thought. I don't know. It's just, it feels like everything was pointing towards it being this Hitman-like puzzle game. Yeah. And then the last year and a half or two, they just said, oh God, we have to just shrink it down. Just has to be a linear path to the end. I mean,
the actual ending, which we won't spoil or go into because there's nothing to really talk about, but that does stink of COVID restrictions and time limits and shit, Because there's just,
it's like the most non-ending I've seen in a game in ages as well, yeah.
That was a bit strange. Because they build up story and, some stuff that's happening, and so I kind of thought something would happen, but
nothing happens. No, yeah. And related to that, Arcane... This is probably my biggest problem with every Arcane game to date, is that they build, unbelievably compelling worlds in terms of lore, art, the integration just of mechanics and story, and everything in their games feels so thought through.
Yeah.
And then it's let down by all of their games having a really boring or nothing story. The actual plots of their games have been bad every time, and it's really frustrating because you spend so much time picking through things, and I know you don't like reading things as much as I do, but I enjoy them for building the world, less so for telling the story, but also I get attached to and interested in the world, and then the main story is just whatever, it's over, haha, twist, or something like that, and Dishonored 1 and 2 are that way, Prey was that way, Mooncrash was that way, and this is that way, and it's a bummer because, man, their worlds are so cool.
Yeah. But we've kind of gone all over the place, but let me take a moment to talk about a positive time I had in the game, which is going to transition into another negative. But I had what I would call a honeymoon period with this game.
Yeah.
And the entire honeymoon period, it's just going to be called Updam. The second time I played the game, I, was frustrated at the tutorialization. So I thought I'm going to stick in one map and just kind of, be thorough with the one map. And the map I chose was Updam. And it was an amazing 4 to 5 hours just in Updam because, again, I was just focused. I was having some good Juliana invasions while trying to do stuff. But the complaint comes... because I think the maps are a little uneven in just general gameplay design.
Yeah.
I think some of them are given a bit more love and attention. I don't think the complex is very interesting. I didn't think Frank's Bay was very interesting. But I thought some of the stuff you were doing at Updam was really cool. I like the weird Mission Impossible game show that's hidden in there. I like the initial mystery where you don't even know how to get over to... Charlie's Island?
Charlie's Place, yeah.
Charlie's Place. There's the most painful scavenger hunt safe puzzle under the bridge, which took me like 2... That. Oh my god, it's so ridiculous, and the award is not very good, but...
Is it a purple trinket?
I think it was just some... what's the currency for infusing?
Oh, Residium?
I think it's just like 500 Residium or something like that.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. But anyway... bringing it back to the positive, it was just a really, really good 4 to 5 hours. But again, it didn't really hold up because I think the maps are a little bit uneven in what you're doing on them. Updam has a lot of really fun mysteries. Obviously, the finale kind of kicks off from there. Alexis's mansion is a really good spot as well. It's super dense and the most challenging part of the game. And just some of the other maps just don't really have a lot going on. I thought Fia's reactor was a super cool mechanic, and then you go past that and it never gets used again. I was like, holy shit.
I don't even know necessarily what that is.
Fia's reactor?
Yeah, because I found a note for how to deactivate it very, very early on in the game, and then I stumbled into the reactor and deactivated it, and then I don't even know what the threat is of it.
If you alert anyone in there and you don't know how to diffuse the reactor, it blows up, destroys the island, and the entire loop ends. And it happened to me twice, and it is the most punishing and tense moment in the entire game because it's the only place with risk and consequence for your inactions. of not being stealthy. And I was like, oh my god, I hope this comes into like the final loop. It reminded me of the what the fish called in Outer Wilds.
Oh yeah, the anglerfish or whatever.
Anglerfish. It reminded me of that part where there's like one last moment of tension where you're like, if I screw this up, I've got to do all of this over again. And I thought that would be incorporated into the end loop, and you just kind of do it once and it doesn't come up again. Again, I'm getting sidetracked. My main point was that some of the maps aren't as fun. Like sometimes you're just like looking around for numbers and batteries and paintings, and there's just too much like picking up, finding a code, getting another code, looking at paintings, picking up batteries and stuff that I just don't think is very fun to do. When it comes to like the environmental puzzle solving in the game.
I think first of all, the reactor thing touches on something that I really like about all of Arcane's games and is absolutely present here, is that just the paths through the game can be so different. Because I know, like, every time I would click on your stream, I would have to bail after about 10 minutes because I would see stuff that I hadn't seen before, which is cool. And all of the levels are really well designed in terms of pathways, things opening up or closing depending on time of day, which is something I was really fascinated by early on.
They're very intricate.
Yes, they're incredibly intricately designed, and like Updom is just a masterful level in terms of layout, and
I love that place.
But also just the idea that the levels change depending on time of day. That was something that was really compelling to me early on, and maintained all the way through, because I went, to Fristad Rock, which I thought was probably the least interesting of the lot, because there was just like nothing there. Mm-hmm. But I only went there in the morning at like very near the end of the game and realized there's this whole big Frank's recording studio is in there, and exploring that was really cool. And I there are a lot of really, I don't know, I like poking around. I really like just like nose to the ground, crawling around, looking at every nook and cranny of maps in first-person games. And I really liked the sheer number of like little sort of environmental puzzles or interesting things that you're like, what's going on here? And there are a lot of them that I still want to go and look at. Again, the actual rewards are rarely worthwhile, but I take pleasure in just discovering and solving those little things that are just useless, and there are a lot of them in there, and it just, Arcane, if nothing else, they're able to build really interesting and intricately designed levels, but I do agree that Updom is extremely, extremely good, and none of the others are quite as good as Updom. And then like the Complex and even Fristad Rock are both sort of like, they feel about a third of the size of Updom, and it feels it. And there's only four maps in the game, and yes, they do change a little bit depending on the time of day, but 4 levels is not a lot for a game that I spent like 24 hours with, or something like that. I was bored of all of the levels by the end of it.
Repetition is an issue for sure.
Yeah.
I want to say, while we're kind of on the topic of the format, we're kind of bouncing all over the place, but I think the one thing I've always really loved about Arcane, or maybe this is more like a recent thing, after Moon Crash, is I like what they're trying with the format or the genre. I think they've realized that the traditional immersive sim is kind of, it's not dying out, but people are starting to maybe get a bit tired of the old format, and they're doing their best to reinvent it. And I do think, conceptually, that Deathloop is super creative and interesting. I like the problem solving when it comes to how do you make a time loop game but not rush the player or make them feel like they're on a timer. Because I do know that a lot of people did not like the time limit in Outer Wilds. They found it like really frustrating to be randomly killed while you're in the middle of something. So I just really like the idea of there being 4 periods of the day that you kind of control yourself, but there is a time-moving aspect, but you're not also rushed. And I wish it was used a little more, but there are quite a few moments where the time of day does matter, and they are probably my favorite moments of the game. And there's even some moments, which I won't spoil because they were my favorite mini puzzles, where if you do something early in a loop, it changes like the environment later on in the loop. And it really feels like mastering the environment and using time to make something happen. Again, my only complaint is that doesn't factor in that often.
No, like the thing in Updom. Yeah, that's the best one. Yeah.
And then there's finding a location in Fristad, I think it is.
Probably, I think.
I wish there was more of them, but I especially am going to be critical in this review, so just want to give Arcane the credit they deserve. I like what they're doing with the genre and the format, and I still think Deathloop, even though I have a lot of problems with it, I just like its design. I like its ideas.
Yeah,
I think I'd play a second one.
Oh yeah,
that's for sure.
I think those designs and ideas are also them trying to find ways to better get people to experiment with the sandboxes, right? And that's something that I feel like that's really been like a dominating topic in our discussions over the last like 6 years is these, and we've gotten better. I think we have like sort of, well, maybe not. Maybe it is game dependent.
Not until you give me a silenced weapon.
Exactly, yeah. I feel like games have gotten better, as Arcane especially has gotten better at sort of being like, hey, why don't you try doing something else other than using blink and invisibility for this entire, for all of Dishonored. And Mooncrash was definitely the most successful. Prey base game for me was the thing that made me understand, I think, how, like, what makes me experiment. And Deathloop is kind of doing that again in the first half. The first half of Deathloop is so fucking good. And because you can get the slabs in a weird order, and you can get them off of a Juliana, and suddenly you have like maybe you get Carnesis or whatever, or Nexus, and you experiment and use that for a long period of time.
It was one of those games which was good to talk to other people who were playing it, because the beginning was very different in directions.
Yeah, and but the problem with it, with everything in Deathloop, is that the first half is really good, and the second half just sort of everything starts extremely wide and everything just converges down into one singularity. And in terms of the experimentation, that happens in Deathloop in the form of, at a certain point, you get Blink upgraded and you get the silenced pistol, and you've beaten the game, because there's no reason to ever unequip that. And once I had my invisibility upgraded all the way, that I just put that on and used it for the second half of the game, because it's like, I'm invisible, I can teleport anywhere, and I can stealth kill everyone and they don't even know what's happening, and if I sit still, I don't even drain invisibility, and that's that's unfortunate, because it starts off as being very good about getting you to try things out, and then it just sort of is like, here's the best, most easiest way to beat it. And maybe that's just a case where you and I are similar in like, hey, we want to be, if you're going to give me the most overpowered thing, I'm going to use it all the way through. I think most people that play games are that way. There will certainly be probably someone that comments saying like, I never used the silenced pistol at all, and that's fantastic. But I think most people, if you give them the most powerful thing, they're just going to use that because it's easy and it's satisfying.
And also there's a penalty for dying, like a pretty rough penalty for dying, especially if you die too much. You lose everything you just got and you restart from the beginning of the loop, so you don't want to die.
Right, and so you want to play it safe. And that also, especially maybe to try and transition us to Juliana, that applies when more so here, if because you're being invaded by other people. And if you weren't being invaded by anyone else, then the whole game would just be like completely tensionless, and there would, you would, I don't know, maybe that would almost cause you to experiment more, because there would be like zero stakes at all, aside from dying 3 times, but it would be like, it'd be kind of an accomplishment to die to the AI 3 times.
It would be.
But for me, the invasions caused me to play a certain way, and every map played out pretty much the same way once I had my build figured out. And Juliana was weird because I did not get invaded once until almost 13 hours into the game.
Yeah, that's so weird. What the hell?
I have no idea why. The thing that I thought fixed it was not the problem, because I got invaded after doing that with, it wasn't the thing. So I played 13 hours of this game without being invaded once outside of the tutorial where she just shows up and you can instantly kill her. And I felt like I was missing out on a really cool part of the game. And again, I was missing out on a cool thing. It is really cool for a little while.
Yes.
And then it starts to become uninteresting. And so it created my honeymoon period was like 15 hours long. And the best part of that 15 hours was from like the 13 to 15 hour mark where I was getting invaded for the first time because I had played the game completely single player, no stakes for 12 hours. And then suddenly the invasions start working for me and I'm being, my peace and quiet single player exploration arcane game is the sanctity of that is being, someone is fucking invading my game and ruining my peace and quiet. And those first 3 or 4 invasions were really good. They were stressful. They added a lot of welcome tension to the game.
Yeah, definitely agree.
And they were super fun. Like, partially because I wasn't overpowered. Yes. And they were still, the Julianas invading were of varying skill levels, and that was fine. But it was mainly because of what I had, and I wasn't expecting to be invaded, primarily. And yeah, it's a really fun cat and mouse. Mm-hmm. When you're playing as Colt.
Yeah.
Because there's no lag on your end either when you're playing as Colt. And the Juliana invasion just adds an excellent change of pace. It adds a ton of tension, and it was really fun and really enjoyable for a few hours. But then for the last 5 or 6 hours, pretty much every time I would go to a level, I'd get invaded. And by then I had my invisibility where I could cloak and sit still and not drain power. And what I would do is I would sneakily make my way to the beacon that I have to hack to open the tunnels. I would climb up high, go invisible, and then hack the thing. And then I would watch Juliana run across the map, and I'd watch her run around underneath me looking for where the fuck I was. And then I would pull out the pistol that creates a gas cloud and shoot a bunch of explosive gas in their face. And then I would switch to the carbine that I discovered that the bullets exploded on impact. And I would blow her the fuck into space every time. And it was super awesome, 2 or 3 times. And it's very satisfying because it's like, haha, you think you're hunting me, but, you're already dead, so goodbye. But then the last 8 times it happened, I just did the exact same thing every time and demolished the Juliana. And then I was back to doing what I'd been doing, which is, stealth killing and blinking around the map. And I think, honestly, I'm surprised at how much of a pushover Juliana is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you want to know my strat?
Yes,
strat?
Please.
It was proximity mines.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I figured.
It was so good. I would literally just find a roof, and I'd be like, this is a good vantage point. If I was Juliana, I'd come up here, and I'd just put down 4 proximity mines, and I'd just go about my day, and eventually just go, Juliana is gone. I reckon fantastic. I killed 5 people, at least, just with proximity mines. Just walking off and just leaving.
That's so funny. That's very good.
Yeah. I did have some good fights. I did have some really good fights, especially near the beginning. I think my biggest issue is it just happened too much for me.
Yes, 100%.
It was almost every single time I went in, and I swear she kept appearing multiple times per loop, which I wasn't like listening to the story, but I was like, isn't there one Juliana? I just killed her. I haven't reset the loop. How does she keep coming back? And I think, again, it's one of these things where it's a great idea, but I don't know how it works in practice because you can't really have someone on the other end queuing and then say, nah, it hasn't been long enough, or, it's been too short of a time. You've got to put them in a game, otherwise they're just sitting in a menu doing nothing. Again, it's just, I feel like a lot of this game is great ideas that just didn't really come together in a perfect way.
Yeah.
In the best way possible.
I 100% agree, with that as a summary, as the whole, really.
Yeah.
And Juliana, she's too weak and is very easy to kill. But also, the frequency was off. And going 12 hours without seeing her and then seeing her, 5 times in a row, and then, 10 times in a row, and then, it put in, I don't know, if it had been, I got invaded, and then it didn't happen for, in Dark Souls, it feels good in Dark Souls because an invasion doesn't happen very often.
Yeah.
And when it does, you're like, oh, fuck. Oh, God, here we go. And yeah, it would have been nice if it happened every few hours and you never knew when it was going to happen. But instead, I would load up a map and I'm like, all right, here comes the invasion. Oh, there it is. Yep. Okay. I'll start executing my plan. And it just happened, pretty much 100% of the time once it started happening for me.
I think there was one time on Fristad Rock where I just went straight to the, whatever you call the radar thing, you deactivate to open up the tunnels again and just waited. I just sat there and waited, and then it popped up, I deactivated it, and I turned around and she was on the cliff, and I just shot her in the face. And it was like 45 seconds.
Wow. Yeah.
I was like, great.
Yeah.
Great. And have a good day.
Yeah, it's a great concept. I love invasion stuff. Like it's so fascinating in From games, and I think it is really cool here for a time. But
it is a cool idea.
It's not quite there. And again, it's Arcane sort of delivering or experimenting with, concepts they've tried to implement, at least based on the, the no-clip docs and stuff. And it's really cool to see them trying different things with this genre.
Yeah, definitely.
Just didn't quite work. And I also think playing as Juliana is no fun at all. Because there's no tutorial. I have absolutely no idea how her masquerade power works. I don't understand how the loadouts, like your starting loadout, you had Blink like right from the get-go as Juliana. I played like 90 minutes maybe. I did a session just where I'm like, I play like an hour of Juliana. I still don't have Blink. And that's no fun. My
Juliana is from a different loop than your Juliana. It's a different reality, man. Or something.
And really, the biggest problem is just the lag is so bad as Juliana. Oh my God!
Didn't have too much lag, I would say. Maybe a little bit. A little bit of stuff here and there.
In the session where I just invaded random people, it was pretty much unplayable for the entirety of it. Maybe like one or two times where it was like, it was mostly okay, but for the most part, it was just it's and it feels impossible to win as Juliana, really. Even though I think she killed me fully once, but like Colt has 3 lives and is more powerful than you.
Yeah.
In terms of loadout and guns, and Juliana just has 1 life, and then it's just done. And
you'll be happy to know that the only Juliana that ended my loop was you.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. When I was running around getting shot up by Igor and running to mines, and just screaming at you, and it wasn't even you.
I watched that. That was funny to watch.
God, it wasn't funny to play.
That map was when I had my first invasion.
God, after it's a horrible place.
After 12 hours. And I managed to kill her pretty quickly. But then I did not know about Igor. Yeah. And so after killing Juliana, and I also didn't understand how the invasions worked, so I killed Juliana. And then like for the next 20 minutes while I'm exploring that level, like maybe 3 times in those 20 minutes, some fucking sniper takes a shot at me. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? What is happening? Is she still here? What is going on? And so it actually made for a really fun experience because then at the end of that level, I was like, oh, it's the AI boss that was shooting at me every now and then.
There were some great moments in Deathloop. Some great moments.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I think it's got a lot of it's got a lot of personality. It's got a lot of style as well. And I like all of that. And there are a lot of good moments. Yeah, for sure. But it just...
Yeah, I feel like Juliana, if you actually get into like a proper one-on-one gunfight with Juliana, it can feel a little strange because you're both super fast and you don't have the muscle memory to play against opponents like that in Deathloop at that point, so it just feels a bit strange. You go from just like pointing at an enemy that's just standing there to playing like Unreal Tournament on the rooftops, and I'm like blinking around, and I'm like, Jesus, my mouse is all over the place. I'm like, what the fuck's going on here? And it can feel a bit messy sometimes. But again, it's other human beings. You can't really blame Arcane. Sometimes you'll have a great moment with a Juliana, and sometimes you'll get like a laggy, kind of horribly messy rooftop shootout or shitout, or whatever you want to call it. And I like it. I like the PvP. I just don't know if there's a perfect solution. Because
I'm not sure either.
And like they try to incentivize you to play as Juliana with this like progression system, but it ain't cutting the mustard.
I also think it's really weird that they lock behind Colt costumes. You have to play as Juliana to get Colt costumes.
I didn't even know there were costumes.
Oh yeah, I got a cool baby blue suit with a fedora and wore that for. But it's like, why should I get rewards for? Anyways, it's a small thing, but it's just sort of odd. I don't know why you wouldn't just get those rewards by killing Juliana as Colt.
If Juliana had been a very rare event, and also if you only had one life, which I feel like it could have worked. I don't know. Maybe some people would have complained it was too hard. But I don't know if you needed I think it's called the reprise system. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you needed that, or maybe not 3 lives.
Even if just give me a toggle, like let me turn on hard mode, and
maybe there's a punishment for using a reprise. You get less. I keep forgetting the currency in this game.
Residium.
Maybe you get less currency, less residium for using. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't threatening. You honestly, if you want to be a scumbag, you can just bum rush down Juliana because you can respawn and she can't. And
exactly.
you probably have some respawns on you because, the AI isn't much of a threat. So a lot of times if I was just annoyed, I just charged at her. And maybe she'd kill me once, but then I would just blink back up and just do the same thing and she'd die. So
because she has to look for healing items as well, like you do. And they're kind of hard to find sometimes. Mm-hmm. And that just reminded me, something they did here that I really, really appreciate is they made the handling of the mana pool, like your power pool, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Your mana. They did that really well. You have like 3 pips, and some charges use more of those pips than others, but it always recharges to full. Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Because in Dishonored and Dishonored 2, and I think they changed this with Death of the Outsider, but for Dishonored 2, I distinctly remember it would not recharge. It would only recharge. So if you had 3 pips in Dishonored 2, if you used 1.5, it would only recharge to 2, and it would not recharge to 3. And so you had to constantly be timid with your power usage and be using potions to replenish your power throughout all of Dishonored 2. And I just never thought that was fun. And I'm going to replay Dishonored 2 one of these days, I think, just because it's been ages, and I feel like I'll like that game even more now. But if I do, I'm going to give myself unlimited of that pool because it's just not fun to have to manage that. And they got rid of that here, and thank goodness it's way more enjoyable to just be able to blink everywhere. And you have to stop for 5 seconds and recharge, and then you can keep going. It's good job. It's more fun.
I think we talked about the the power structure of the game a lot. But another thing, this fucking talk's never going to end, dude. I actually really liked the idea of the Souls-like system where if you die, you drop all your Residium on the floor.
Yeah.
I think you get too much Residium in the game. For people who don't know, it's a currency which allows you to basically keep a weapon or ability for every loop going forward. Which is a really fun idea for a system. Because if you don't have enough Residium and you have found a gun or a power, you lose it. And I had some really great moments where I had only 1 respawn left. I had Blink, which I hadn't got before, and then I died. I got killed by Juliana, and then I lost it. It's like, oh man, I've lost Blink. I have to go back to Charlie and get Blink again because I really want to, And there were some great moments like that. But as the game goes on, you get more powerful, you stop dying, and you end up with 30,000 Residium at the end of the day, and you can infuse everything you have. You never have to make a choice of, I've only got enough Residium for one of these great weapons. Do I infuse the pistol or the shotgun? You're just loaded with Residium, and you don't die. So, yeah. Great idea for a system. Could have been super tense, but again, you just kind of kick ass in this game.
I think at one point in one mission, I ended it with 80,000 Residium after breaking some stuff down as well.
But how fun would it have been to get to the end of the loop and you're like, oh man, I can only afford Blink or, one of the other powers.
I had that one time. One time I wanted to infuse, it was a slab upgrade. I don't remember what it was. And I had to scrap. I had also picked up the dual wielding sort of combo pistol, that you can snap together into one gun.
Yeah.
And I was like, I had to sacrifice one or the other to infuse one.
See, that's cool.
Yeah, and so I had to scrap the pistols. Yeah, because I wanted the upgrade, and then I only went back and got that pistol 10 hours later. And
it's an annoying pistol to get.
Yeah, and I liked that. I liked the sacrifice was good, and that's I would say that's one of the 2 big problems that I have with Deathloop is just it does not ask you to take risks or risk anything. You don't have to ever be like, oh, deciding one thing over the other, yeah, it would have been so much more interesting if you had to make those decisions more than once. Yeah. And I think I lost my Resinium once very early on. I got locked in there's a weird room on Fristad Rock where there's a man in like a glass like observation room that hates you, and I haven't figured this out yet. And you get locked in that room, and he gasses you to death. If you don't know how to escape, you die in there. And I died in there because I was running around being like a chicken with its head cut off. And I died, and then I went back to the door, and it was sealed from the inside. I'm like, fuck! There's my 10,000 Residium is locked in that room now. And I loved that. It was sort of annoying, but it was also fun. And
like the one time Thea blew up the reactor and just ended my loop, I was devastated. I was like, wait, what the hell? I lost everything.
Yeah, like that's fantastic. And that,
moments.
It never happened to me again after that. I never once lost my stuff.
I think the one interesting thing about doing this chat is, before this, everything was just in bullet points. And now just laying it out in a conversation, I've realized how much of the things I wasn't into comes down to maybe the power increase in the game. And now if you were just a little weaker, or maybe a lot weaker, this game probably would have worked a lot better for me, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
But then it's hard to say, like, would it have been frustrating doing the same shit over and over again if you were dying? So it's just, maybe it's just a difficult idea to get right. They obviously didn't get the balance right for me, but I don't know. Maybe they talked about this for years and just couldn't figure out the right balance.
I think, not to sound like an arrogant dick, but most people are really fucking bad at video games. I hate to say it, but like, it's true.
Yeah.
And they want they want their games to be, especially I think after things like Prey and Dishonored ultimately bombed in terms of sales, they've probably made up for it in the long run. I think, all those games are well regarded, but sort of sleeper hits. I feel like they sort of wanted this to break big a bit more than they have in the past, especially because prior to the Microsoft acquisition, Arcane was like on the chopping block apparently from Bethesda. I understand them wanting to make it an easier game, and looking around online, it seems like most people didn't have the problems we have with the easiness of it. And I definitely see people saying like, I keep dying to Juliana's and things like that. And part of it, I do think, is just, we've played a lot of first-person shooters. We know how to handle ourselves. We're good at it, and we're good at these games. And when you're good at them, there is no challenge whatsoever. And I think, maybe for the average player, there is more challenge. But yeah, they probably. I think it's fairly deliberately easy, or for someone like us, and it probably helps it be more successful and sell more copies. But you could have they could have just put a hard mode in. Honestly, if I could just enable hard mode and say like I only have my one life, that would have immediately made things more interesting. No reprise would have immediately made a difference. I think.
I don't know, man.
It's hard to say.
I don't remember feeling this way about Prey or Dishonored, that like they were super easy games. Prey had guns. I don't know. Yeah, it's hard to say. Actually, no, I changed my mind. I agree. We're just too good at video games. Yeah,
exactly.
And
exactly.
Arcane's the best.
I remember Dishonored 2 having a lot of similar problems of like, I have Blink and I have this other thing, and that's all I used for the entire game. And because it was, it's the easiest thing. And Prey was, for me, better about mixing things up and getting me to try more things. And the enemies in Prey are just a lot more, there's diversity to the enemies, and they're a lot more dangerous. The mimics pop out of nowhere. The weird, remember the giant fucking horror monster that chases you? The nightmare, like this game could use a nightmare type of enemy.
I'd say that's Juliana. That's kind of the same role, right?
I suppose you're right. But it could also use something in between.
Right, yes.
Like Dishonored 2 has, later on, they introduce, after the Clockwork, there's like those robot soldiers, the Clockwork soldiers or something, and they're a lot harder to deal with, and this needed something like that. I think
that exact thing written down in my notes. Because the AI is a big complaint. I've seen it across the board, people saying the AI is too easy, and it is, but also you don't really want to spend the entire game having a sweaty gunfight with all the AI.
No, yeah.
Especially if you're retreading the same areas. But also, you don't want it to be too easy, So, Prey does a good job of mixing in easier enemies and then ones you just want to walk around. And Deathloop is just missing something. It's missing a threat somewhere. And it's not Juliana, because you can't just walk around Juliana. She locks the tunnels up, so you kind of have to fight her. She's not really like the Nightmare, because the Nightmare you can just run and hide from because he's fucking terrifying. It's almost impossible to fight that guy. And, the mimics in Prey always put you on the edge a little bit. You always,
100%.
Looking in the corner of your eye. And in Deathloop, it's just Juliana and the... what are they called? The Environmentalists or some shit?
Eternalists.
And even the Visionaries are just kind of humans. And I think it just needed something else. I don't know what it is. I'm not a game designer, but just just a thing. Just a thing to just make more variation when you're walking around.
100%, yeah. Some sort of higher tier enemy that isn't like a boss tier in the way that it is with Juliana. Yeah, just something to get you off the rooftop, something to stop you using stealth or force you into a fight or something. Because I think when a fight breaks out, it's fun. I really enjoy the shooting feels good. The weapons are interesting. Bombing around with Blink and fighting guys from rooftops and doing all that feels really good. It's probably their most fun to play game just in terms of the raw combat, because Dishonored I never cared for, so I avoided the combat. Prey is just sort of like, I don't know, you just shoot guys, right? And it's fine in terms of the actual combat. But this feels, you feel mobile, you feel like you have a lot of abilities and powers and guns, and all of it feels good. And so it's fun when a fight breaks out. It's just that, for the second half of the game, you're just like, why would a fight's never going to break out? Like, it's just impossible. I'm using a suppressed gun. Everyone's already dead. Like, there's no one to fight.
And you can carry 3 weapons, so usually you have like one big LMG gun ready for, if things really kick off. So, I enjoyed the combat. I did.
Yeah,
pretty simple and straightforward, but I thought it felt good.
Any combat that lets me move around really quickly, I always have a ton of fun with that. So I wish I got in more gunfights.
Yeah, I have a couple of like more miscellaneous things.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, just little bits and bobs.
I think the proximity mines in the game are so fucking obnoxious it made me want to delete the whole game. Oh my god. Oh my god, the proximity mines in this game can go fuck themselves. Just what? You can barely see them. Even when I can hear them beeping, I can barely find them on the ground. And then they just send me flying and they take away a chunk of my health. Like, just keep the red tripwire things in. They're kind of cute. You can shoot and see them and figure it out. And when I see a turret, I can navigate it and plan. But I can't fucking see these mines. Make them brighter. I don't know. I just fucking hate them. I just fucking hate the proximity mines. They don't add anything to the game. Go fuck yourself.
The one thing I liked about the proximity mines is every time you took damage from them, Colt would do this hilarious little yell, and it made me laugh every time. I did
like his little scream.
His little, Wah!
I know, he would scare the shit out of me every time.
Yes, exactly. He made the noise I was making, and it was funny every time, but yeah, fuck them.
Whoever RK made those, I don't like you. You absolute bastard. This might be a PC-specific thing, but there's some weird, like, key mappings for switching between stuff. You like hold G to change the type of grenade, but also just press G to chuck the grenade. So sometimes you just kind of like accidentally open up a radial menu and you have to press tab to get back to powers, but you also have to press tab to switch powers. So sometimes you press tab once and you've got the wrong power out, and I'll kinesis someone off a roof when I want to go invisible, and it just feels really clumsy. Even like 19 hours into the game, I was kind of like feeling a bit weird about quickly switching between grenades, guns, and powers. Because a power sometimes is in like one hand, and if you're dual wielding, then you lose the power, which makes sense. But like it's just weird. It's a bit weird in my opinion. It's not the biggest complaint. It just feels a little clumsy at times, and I don't know. I've got a whole keyboard here. Can I just map things to different places? I don't know.
Well, you could, yeah. I rebound quite a few things to sort of. Oh well, first of all, I don't think.
But isn't it always like locked onto a specific, the way it functions?
Well, first of all, I pretty much never used grenades once at all. So I never opened that menu. But I put the hack-a-majig on one of my mouse buttons, which alleviated some of it. But I do agree, yeah, like there were still, even at the end of the game, I would still every now and then go to do something and accidentally blink instead of going invisible or something because I didn't have the right power selected. Yeah, and I also never dual wielded, so I actually completely forgot dual wielding was in the game until you just said it. But a couple of times I would still have that after 20 hours, which is, it does feel a little weird when you're still like fucking up after playing 20 hours of a game. Yeah,
it's not a huge thing. I feel like there should have been a better way to do that. I don't know why you have to like cycle. Whatever.
Yeah.
This is going to be subjective, but I didn't really like the writing in the game.
Oh, interesting.
I thought like most of the game just feels like people just saying fuck you, and then the other people say fuck you, and then you say fuck you, and then they say fuck you, and it just felt like everyone was just swearing at each other for the entire game, and it just kind of felt a little bit like it was trying to be edgy with all this like just yelling at each other all the time, and I just wasn't that into it. The voice actors did a good job, but I was just so bored of Juliana and Cole's interactions, because just to have a conversation, they're like, go fuck yourself, go die. And it's like, all right, I get it. You don't like each other. Shut up, man. And like all the notes, and Alexis is just screaming swear words, and it's like, it's not my thing. Not my thing. I didn't really like the writing. Again, these are at the bottom of the pile of the miscellaneous stuff. Mm-hmm. So these aren't like deal breakers. And I would say that's more personal choice. I reckon it's not like Borderlands 3, it's just not for me.
Yeah, I would say the voice actors do an amazing job, especially Colt and Juliana. Colt especially, he just is fantastic. But I do agree that like just there's no character arc or progression with them.
Yeah.
Every time you start a mission, they're just sniping at each other, and Colt tries to make a little progress, and then Juliana just shuts him down every time, and he's just like, all right, fuck you too, and that's the end of it. And yeah, I agree, it sort of gets a little grating after a while, but some of the characters, I enjoyed some of the collectible writing. I think some of them are written in a way that's just like, oh god, this fucking guy is so annoying, but some of the writing, I enjoyed some of it. Just it evoked a certain like, these people are all the worst, and but there was some of them have like a bit of a manicness to the way it's written, and it's almost like almost a sort of broken English at times. Like they're sort of putting words in different orders, and there were a few notes that I read, and there's a sentence in them, and I'm like, that's a good sentence. I like that sentence. Like there's one where she's talking about being visited by a guard, and it's like, when he comes by, I get the thirsty shivers, and I'm just like, oh god, I hate that. But that's a great weird, gross bit of writing. But the writing is all just a blur in my head because every bit of story is collectibles.
Mostly, yeah.
Pretty much.
I didn't really understand what was going on. There's a couple of story cutscenes in the game where you get visited by a certain someone.
Yeah, I still don't. Yeah, I have no idea.
Like, this is cool. And then it ends, and I was like, oh, okay, I don't really know what happened.
Exactly, yeah. And then, I don't know if you read the spoilers I put in Backlog Blitz this morning in our channel, but like, I was reading about the wider lore and world, as I like to do in games, and I wish I had picked up on it because it's really cool. And but when a game is nothing but collectibles, they just start to blur and merge and evaporate after a certain point.
And they have the challenge of making it work in any order that you go in.
Right, yeah.
Which is probably the hardest part. Playing Deathloop has made me realize how fucking amazing Outer Wilds is. Like, how did they make it work on their first try?
I don't know. Yeah.
They're incredible. They're just incredible. Oh my god, that game's so good.
But yeah, I think there were little bits of writing that I liked, or, more than a few little bits of writing that I liked, and I think the voice actors elevate the material and do a really good job with it. But yeah, I agree. I can't say I disagree with those points. I just wasn't as bothered by them for sure.
Yeah. It's low on my list.
Yeah.
But that's mostly all I have. I think I've said everything at some point in this long ramble.
I'm just looking through my thing here.
I feel like I would have forgiven a lot if the final loop had really come together.
I agree. Yeah,
a good ending can fix a lot of problems, you know? A real good ending can fix, but the ending sucked.
Yes.
And yeah, it just kind of maybe even accentuated my issues because, you know, you end and you're like, oh, and then the bitterness can rise a little bit over time. You're like, well, I can't really forgive this stuff when it kind of didn't come together for anything.
I would say I suspect I will like it more as time passes because I enjoyed a lot about it more than you did.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of... I still love Arcane, and I have nothing but respect. The game tries a lot of new things.
It does.
It doesn't nail it, but it is at least trying.
Yeah.
And it's really refreshing because you look at this game and you're like, man, they can still do so much with a first-person shooter, and they could still do so much with a sequel to Deathloop, where they managed to take it, like I said at the top, they managed to take it from 80% to all the way. And I think my brain is more rewarding of stuff like that, where I'm like, they almost did it, but they didn't quite, but I'm okay with that. You know, they tried. I would have loved if they had nailed it, of course. If they had nailed it, like I said, this would probably be one of my favorite games in years.
Yeah,
but they
too,
missed the mark in a lot of places, and it is a bummer. But also, I still liked it quite a bit and had, for the most part, a pretty good time with it. It's just that it's a shame that the last 6 to 8 hours of it were when I got the most negative with it. And and like you said, a bad ending also, it really does suck energy out of you know, it's the last thing you experience. And
like everyone shits on Game of Thrones, even though it had like 6 great seasons. But everyone remembers it as a piece of shit because of the ending.
It's not just a story ending, it's like the whole climax and build up and payoff is missing from the entire gameplay, story, learning, puzzle solving. Every part of it is,
especially when it's set up from the very beginning, and you know there's one ultimate aim, and you're working towards it.
Yeah, and it's a big bummer to me that like I had. There was like 6 hours in, I realized I'm like, oh my fuck, this is what this game is. This is what they're doing. This is going to be incredible. The snowball and execution is going to be unbelievable. This is so cool.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't that. And that there's nothing worse than the game making you think it's one thing and that thing is going to be awesome, and then it's not. It doesn't manage to do that at all.
I think that's why I came out probably swinging harder than maybe I would have, because that honeymoon period I talked about in Up Down was glorious. It was just 4 straight hours, one session, and I didn't have a single second where I wasn't enjoying the game. And you start to build these lofty ideas in your mind when you see like some of the more intricate and interesting parts of Up Down. And yeah, it just didn't come together in a way that I thought was interesting. Which is a shame. You know, I have so much respect for Arcane. They are single-handedly trying to keep immersive sims alive on their own.
And still trying to do a lot of really interesting things with them. Yeah.
Single-player weird constructs and genre blending and all this interesting stuff, and mostly single-player stuff on a big AAA scale.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't want to be the guy who shits on those guys. I like what they do.
I know, it makes me sad.
It makes me sad.
I was expecting to have loved everything about this game. I think we just wrote it off for most of this year being like, well, Deathloop's going to rip, you know? It's going to be fucking amazing.
Yeah.
And it's...
What do you think about the IGN and GameSpot 10 out of 10 reviews? They were a bit sus. They were a bit suspicious.
Game reviews are
useless.
They're
useless. But that's a weird one.
People can like what they like, and that's fine.
They can like what they like.
A 10 out of 10 is for what one would call a perfect score.
A perfect score.
And I can think of maybe like 4 games in my life that I would say is a 10 out of 10. Even something like that I would call the best game, my favorite game of the generation, like The Witcher 3. That game ain't a 10 out of 10. That's for fucking sure. No. You know, Deathloop is not an 8 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10 game. It's not even maybe an 8 out of 10 game.
Not an 8 out of 10 for me, no.
It's probably, if you know, on the 5-star scale, which is what I prefer, it's probably a 3-star thing that I like more than that score, but that is where I would land it, even though we don't score or do reviews or anything anymore, really. But
I'm not going to say a number.
10 out of 10.
I give it a 10 out of 10.
Oh, me too.
Me too. 10 out of 10.
I will take the check now, Microsoft. Please and thank you.
Yeah. The hell, Bethesda. Give us a ring. I'll give it a 10 out of 10. I don't give a shit.
They must have had a fucking incredible time with that game.
Yeah, I guess. It's a good game. It's a good game.
It is.
It's a good game.
It just... it could have been...
I find it... Yes, it's hard for me to quantify the stuff I like in the game because I don't like most of it on like a structural level. But it doesn't mean there wasn't like some great individual moments that really happened. And I'm not going to sit here and do story time and explain them all. But, you know, I had fun with it. I did have fun with it. But, yeah, just... I respect it more than I like it, is what I'll say.
Yeah.
Did we want to transition? Did you play any Kana?
I played like, I don't know, an hour and a half of it, and I will go back to it.
Okay. I played 2 hours, and I'm not going back to it.
No.
I'm not playing more of that game. No,
I probably will, but also I played the 2 hours and then have forgotten it exists.
No.
It seemed fine.
It's a pretty game. But I did not like that combat.
No, I honestly
No.
I thought it felt fine to me.
Give it a little bit.
I don't know. I did the like 3 fights, I think. I have the arrow. I just got the arrow.
Yeah.
Does it get worse after the arrow?
That game reminds me of Knack. It's like, why is this game so hard? Like, what's going on here?
Really?
Yeah.
Does it get like substantially harder after you get the arrow?
Yeah. The game's weird.
I'll play a little more because what I played, I was like, oh, this seems like a pretty easy, pretty chill thing.
Yeah, combat gets pretty punishing. I'm not sure if I want to say it's hard, but it's harder than I care for.
Harder than it looks. Game. Yeah.
Harder than I'm willing to give it, you know, when it comes to effort and attention, because apart from that, you're just kind of like climbing around and I don't know, that's kind of it. The rot are cute. I'll give it that.
I like the rot a lot. Yeah, I wish the rest of the game had as much personality. It seems very like self-serious and just sort of like bland, but I'll probably play more of it.
Also, it's the first game ever, so again, I respect it more than I like it.
But yeah, I don't think we need to do a review discussion, especially because both Psychonauts and Deathloop went long.
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah, I will play more of it. Maybe I'll enjoy it. Maybe I'll get to the difficulty stuff and be like, fuck this! Because
I can't see you going through that. We'll see. Not that you're bad at games, but it just isn't very...
No, I have low tolerance for melee combat, especially.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. The few boss fights I did felt pretty... I was enjoying it more than I thought. I was like, the combat feels... It's simple, but like, feels kind of okay.
Sure.
We'll see.
We will see.
Maybe I'll break my DualSense by the next time we talk.
Or maybe this will be just one game where you're just a master at.
Maybe. Hey, you know, sometimes, very infrequently, it can happen. But no, this will be the last episode for, you know, this is definitely the September episode or whatever we call it.
The next one will probably be a very multiplayer heavy discussion, I imagine.
Yeah, I guess so. Year. Like I'm not gonna... I don't want to talk about Far Cry, that's for sure.
No.
Unless... Though I think we probably said that about Far Cry 5 and 5.5, and we did chats about those. So you never know what could happen. It could be a real fucking nightmare. But, yeah, it'll probably be one more chat, you know, in, like, December that covers the multiplayer game. So, like Battlefield and Halo, and that's kind of it. I
don't really want to talk about, you know, we don't need to talk about Forza. Forza would be good.
Yeah, it's a racing game.
Riders Republic. Nah, we don't talk about that. Yeah. We'll just do like a multiplayer special. I won't be playing it, so you can go ahead.
No, I'm not playing that campaign, that's for sure. Yeah, it'll be Battlefield and then probably quite a lengthy Halo discussion, because we do like to talk a lot about Halo.
We do.
And I will be fascinated to see what that campaign is, because boy, do they sure not want to show it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's going to be interesting, because the more I look at the multiplayer, the more it's starting to feel like, hey, you know, this doesn't feel actually that rushed. It actually feels like there's a lot of intricate thought put into some of the systems and multiplayer.
Yeah.
And, balance and what you like in Halo is going to, change between people. But when you look at it from a production value standpoint, the multiplayer's looking pretty, strong in that regard.
Yeah.
So, you start to wonder, what is the problem child here? And then, all
gonna be the
hands are
campaign, for
pointing
sure.
right towards the campaign.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
that is going to be interesting.
Yeah, it'll also just be interesting to see what the final package looks like.
Yeah, because we still don't know, right?
No, we don't know how many maps, how many modes, what are the playlists, what's the customization, how crazy is the monetization, what's the campaign like, because that's the only thing you get when you pay full price now, is you're just getting a campaign, so
Yeah.
is it going to be like 7 hours and then it's over? I don't know. Battlefield and Halo. I don't even remember what the last multiplayer game we would have done on this show would be.
Probably World War II and Star Wars Battlefront 2.
Oh my god. I think
Probably
you're probably right. That was like 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh wow. And those were not good.
No.
Battlefront 2 was so bad it changed global laws.
It did. Oh boy.
I'm just looking now.
We didn't play Battlefield 5 or talk about Battlefield 5.
We didn't talk about Battlefield 5. I think you're right.
We obviously, didn't do a talk on Modern Warfare, I don't think.
Oh, we did. That was part of the legendary 4-hour chat that had 20 minutes, 30 minutes of Modern Warfare, 30 minutes of us shitting on Outer Worlds, 3 hours of us talking about Death Stranding, and then you and I, weakened and exhausted, talking about and dunking on Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order for like another half an hour.
Star Wars was alright.
It was fine.
It was okay.
Modern Warfare, that was the last game. Multiplayer game we discussed 2 years ago.
Jesus. Well, I'm excited.
Yeah, Battlefield and Halo. I am excited for one and fascinated to see the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But I think we've gone on long enough.
Oh god, yeah.
Thank you for listening yet again. We'll be back in December. And go play Psychonauts 2.
Yeah!
Have a good day.